Okay. Welcome, everybody.
Let
me unmute first.
You did.
I am so JB and TJ are in South Bend for the let me start that one again. Little foobar there. Take two. Well, let me start that. Let me fix that really quick.
Gray hates me. Muted.
I know. So I'm sorry. I was on mute there again for a second. Sorry. That's twice.
I knew you got me there. I did that on purpose, Scott. I'm going to start over. I'm going to just stick with that. Nobody needs to read the rest of it.
And I don't know. These guys never grow up.
Remember, Doug, you can always blame Bonani. I am John Bonani.
No, I am John Bonani.
No, you fool! I'm John Bonani.
This is why the Plastic Posse Pacific Northwest Division should be on every episode.
Welcome to episode 91 of the Plastic Posse. We appreciate you joining us for another episode of the Triple P. Just a reminder, the Plastic Posse podcast is brought to you by Tankraft, Tamaya USA, and AK Interactive. JB and TJ are in South Bend for the AMPS Nationals, along with Jackson, Grizz, AK, Doc, Eric, iBones Models, and a cast of thousands. Have fun, guys. Also, happy birthday, JB. You're getting older like the rest of us. So we've got a motley crew of Pacific Northwesters and a couple guys from the Utah and from around the other places. First, we've got Scott in Utah. How you doing, Scott?
Doing pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Doug, number one. How are you doing, Doug?
Well, I'm assuming I'm number one.
Yes, you are.
Sorry. And I'm not even muted. Yay. I'm doing real well, and I'm excited for some hockey in Utah. How's that?
There you go. Watch out, Phoenix. We're taking your team. Also, we've got Doug Reed joining us today. Thanks, Doug, for joining us. How you doing, Doug?
I'm doing good. Thanks. Glad to be here. So enjoying the time.
We have Mr. Jim Bates from the Pacific Northwest. Jim, how you doing?
I'm doing great because pretty soon Phoenix won't have a hockey team.
Oh, jeez. There goes all the posse listeners in Arizona. Jim, I have to apologize. The Jim Bates chair is out for refurbishment and enlargement, so we got to make room for Muffin in the chair. So hopefully that'll be back next time you're on with us.
So then just call me Doug 3, I guess.
We also have from Portland, Rick Lawler. How you doing, Rick?
I'm good, and I actually don't care much about hockey one way or another.
It's been a pretty interesting week for us here in the Posse. We have a great interview coming up. We also have a lot of people at AMPS Nationals, like I said, but I have to bring this up. Andy's Hobbies has introduced his new 1/16th kit. It is the M113A1. Also, it has the ACAB version, which means it has the gun shields on it that were used in Vietnam and post-Vietnam. I want to go around the room again and get some feeling from how you guys think about this. First, I'm going to go back to Scott. Scott, what do you think?
I think it's a really good choice. I think the Podfather probably slipped some bills to Andy to make this happen. He's going to be really, really excited. It's a great size. I think that's really cool. And as you mentioned, the ACAB version is really cool. I think that's one that'll be really popular. So I hope he does really well with it. You know, just another great release. And then yesterday, he also posted he'll be making another announcement. Sounds like he'll be back kind of to that World War II theme, but here in the next 3 or 4 weeks, he's going to make another announcement. So great for Andy to really be doing well with these 1/16 scale kits. Oh, also, we probably should mention Jensen is missing, so our art and culture department won't won't be joining us today.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that, Jensen. I forgot to mention you. I don't know who's going to do the merch part, but we'll have to figure out someone to do it really eloquently. Rick, let's go to you. What do you think, Rick? What about the 113?
I think in the hands, I agree with Scott. I think it's a really interesting subject. I think the size at 1/16 is good. In the hands of somebody, we all kind of look to Spud as to somebody who's at the top of their game in terms of that scale. The weathering opportunities, and there's so many references as just out there. And so I think there's going to be some really nice kits sitting on some tables very soon.
I think there's such an opportunity for that vehicle, too. There's so many conversions, simple conversions you can do for it. The aftermarket crews are going to go crazy. I mean, there's all the IDF versions. There's the Australian versions that were in Vietnam. You've got just a million of them out there. It's still in use today. I mean, you see them running around in Ukraine. You see them all over the Middle East still. I mean, they're everywhere. So it's going to be an interesting one. Doug, what do you think?
Well, it's not a vehicle that I know that much about, but it's going to be cool. I really do like it. I think it will be very interesting to see what different modelers come up with when they do build it because of the variants available. But like I said, I don't know that much about it. I don't really know much about modern armor or even semi-modern armor. We'll see. I mean, it's a cool subject, though.
It's going to be fun. Doug, what do you think?
I like the idea of a more modern subject like that coming out in that scale. Like Doug one said, kind of a semi-modern coming out. I have I think it's the AFE Club kit of it in 35th. And I don't know, 1/16th, it's big, but it would be something I'd think about in that particular vehicle. I don't normally go to that scale, but for something like that, I might. I'll think about that.
Yeah, I think that kit's got a lot of people thinking the exact same thing. It's going to be interesting. Mr. Jim Bates, I know it's not an airplane, and it's not a 1/16 Hurricane or something like that.
He's a tank builder, man.
Oh, okay.
He just pretends to be an aircraft modeler at this point.
I want to know how many 172 M113s I could put in the cargo bay of the 1/16th M113. Actually, what I'm looking forward to is I want to see somebody convert one to a 1/16th scale Canadian ADATs. That would be really cool. They didn't really use them much. They didn't work real well, but they look cool with the radar and forget what missiles were on there. Stinger, maybe. I don't know. I don't know what the ADATS missiles were, but that'd be very cool. I actually also have a 135th one, and it's an ACAV, and I'm waiting for some star decals because during Bosnia, the Canadians sent a bunch of M113 ACAVs. And what's really cool about some of them is they're painted white with UN on the side, but all the ACAV stuff is olive drab. So I think that would make a really cool model. And I'm still trying to figure out why UN peacekeepers were driving around with giant, 50 cals on the top of their tanks.
I'll be the last one. Like I said earlier, there's so many variants. There's so many, the decals that are going to probably come out. The Vietnam ones had those, a lot of them had those really beautiful names all over them, the different colors and stuff like that. I think it's going to be a winner for them. It's going to be nice. I can't wait to see what other figures people might come out with. It'll be interesting. I'm also going to go back to everybody and see what's on their bench right now. So I'm going to start off with myself. Currently, I am working on a Tamiya Leopard 2A6 for a Ukraine version. It's just been a vehicle I've been working on for a while. I just kind of keep on work a little bit and put it away. I bought a whole bunch of reactive armor for it, so I think that's going to look cool. Some side screens, different nettings and stuff like that. So that's been a project I've kind of been putting on and off, but that's what I've been working on. I'm going to go to Rick to see what he's working on.
Well, maybe I shouldn't disclose this, but Grant and I have had many, or a few, I should say, late night conversations. We're both working on some figures, kind of sharing our work back and forth, and that's been a lot of fun and some good feedback from master painter Grant in terms of trying to help myself up my game. Otherwise, I've got the new AK Power Wagon, the IDF version here, sitting beside me. It's now put together. I think I've posted some photographs of that on my socials, Facebook and Instagram, and doing quite a bit of work behind the scenes. I think I can disclose this now that I've been testing out a lot of the new real colors paints and making videos and some promo stuff for that. So that's taken a lot of my time over the last couple of weeks and getting that sorted out.
I can't wait to try those new real colors. They look good. And the Power Wagon is, of course, another unique vehicle from AK. It's great. I really can't wait till mine arrives. Jim, what are you working on?
Well, I'm an airplane guy, so of course I'm building an Airfix 172nd Sherman Firefly and an Italieri 156 Churchill.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Told you.
Yeah, it absolutely makes sense.
Scott's over there just shaking his head. Doug Reed, what are you working on?
Okay, well, Jim, I build anything. So my current bench has the Airfix 148 F51. So working on that, I've got paint on it and finishing up canopy and gear. And it's interesting, our club is doing a ongoing build of Oregon Air National Guard aircraft. And this is going to be an Oregon bird when I get done, markings and all. So working on that. But I have a couple tanks in the background. So an M60 Blazer and the Stug 3 that I mentioned. So they make slow progress.
Well, you're now my favorite person because you're doing Oregon National Guard.
There you go.
You win. We all bow down.
We're in Seattle, Rick. We'll have our display up there, and we're going to show it off. So,
this coming weekend?
Yeah, or in 2 weeks. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'll see you there.
Doug, are you doing the P51 that didn't have the star and bar? Because I've got some pictures. I'll send them to you. Yeah, I'll send you. I've got some pictures really early on. They have ORNG, and there's just an empty space in between. They didn't put the star and bar on the fuselage.
Oh, interesting. Because I've got the picture very much like that, the OREG, OREG, but it's got the national insignia on it. So yeah, send it to me. That'd be good.
Yeah, I will do that.
All right. Let's go to Doug in Utah. What are you working on?
Well, I pushed all of my in-progress stuff to the side and started the Tamiya Messerschmitt 109 G6 and 48 scale. I ordered aftermarket decals. I got the SBS models markings decal sheet for Hungarian 109s. And I've picked out what I'm going to be doing, which markings I'm going to use. I'm actually having a lot of fun with it. There's a lot of detail in this kit. I'm used to their even slightly older 48 scale stuff that has it's a lot. They're a lot simpler. The stuff from the 90s, I built their Mustang and their 190s and stuff, and this actually has a lot more detail. It even has a full engine in it, and I'm going to try to build it. I figure if it doesn't, I've never built an inline engine like this. If it doesn't turn out, I'll just cover it up. So no big deal, but I'll go ahead and build it anyway. I used masking tape to build the seat belts and had a little help with that. I'll talk about that in a little bit, but yeah, that's what I'm working on. It's a fun little kit. Fits real well.
That's great. Yeah, the pictures look really good, and can't wait to see that done. Scott, what about you?
So I've really been working primarily on a couple shows. Talked my friend Rick here into joining the posse with AK for the Best of the West on May 18th. We'll talk about that a little bit more coming up here, but that's going to be awesome to have him down there with us, and we're going to have a good time. And then my show here in Utah is getting close, so a lot of planning for that. Just trying to get that done. I have done a little bit of work on my tractor vignette. I got the wall. All the color blocked in and some weathering started on that, and put down kind of a layer of brown AK acrylic mud paste to get rid of that Pink Panther look to the vignette base. So I did that. Yeah, that's pretty much it. But yeah, mostly working on shows and the podcast, and then dealing with a serious case of FOMO. Originally both Grant and I were going to be at AMPS, and the day job decided it was more important, so wasn't able to go. But anyway, just nursing a little bit of a grump this week, I think.
Definitely know how you feel. Definitely got some FOMO after seeing a lot of those pictures.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
The Plastic Posse podcast is sponsored by Tankcraft, makers of the highest quality cutting mats for your modeling bench. Tankcraft cutting mats are heavy-duty, self-healing, come in 2 awesome sizes, and have World War II tank and aircraft blueprint-style drawings on them. Spread out your next build on an olive green M4 Sherman or Dunkelgelb King Tiger mat, and they've got aircraft too. So check out all the designs and also their range of unique modeling tools over at tankcraft.com. That's TANKRAFT.com. Don't forget, Plastic Posse listeners can use the code POSSE15 to get 15% off your first order.
So everybody's been working. So I want to start us off with our first discussion question of the day. So we have an interview coming up, and this question came up in the interview, and I thought it'd be a good question for the rest of us. I will caveat this question, though, at the end, so please listen. The question is, what is your favorite part of the modeling process? Is it looking for reference images and information on the project that you're going to build next? Is it building the kit out of the box yourself? Or is it adding extra parts like, doing a mass amount of 3D parts or new barrels or photo etch, stuff like that? Is it painting and weathering the kit? Is that your favorite part? Or is it just like integrating it into the base for a diorama? So here's the caveat. No one's going to be able to take the easy way out and say all of it is my favorite part. So you have to give me an answer. All right. I know some of us have a tendency to say, oh, yeah, I love the whole thing. And then they move on. We're not going to do that. So I will start off with myself. I've been thinking about this a little bit. And for me, it's the reference. I love finding reference images of vehicles, finding information about vehicles, unique images of vehicles. There's a lot of images of Leopard 2A6s that are in the Ukraine that have just been they've thrown on reactive armor and put on different side skirts, taken the side skirts off, changed the barrel, basically the look of the barrel so it confuses the Russians. I also feel the same way about in World War II during the Hungarian campaign in late 44 and 45. Around Budapest and all that whole area is a very interesting time for modelers. There's a lot of different kind of German vehicles, a lot of different kinds of Stugs, the Hetzers, Panthers are out there. The Russians used a lot of Lend-Lease equipment during those battles. So you'll see, M4s right next to an Su-76, which is not very, stuff like that. So for me, I think the reference and the model building for the model building process is the funnest part. Now, I do caveat that again with, I also like to build bases. I like building bases. I like to build things that tell a little bit of a story. So I would say those two things are the most important to me. I like to find a story or images from reference material that is, draws your attention, kind of tells a little bit of the story. And that's what I find the most interesting about building. What about you, Scott?
So it's definitely not decals. I think a couple things. If I'm building armor, I really, really like adding metal tracks and metal barrels. I just think it's like adding bling to your model. I really, really enjoy that. But my favorite thing, if I have to just pick one aspect, is when you've masked something and you pulled it off, whether that's a national insignia paint marking or some camouflage masks, or even some really well done canopy masks. Just there's something incredibly satisfying about peeling back a paint mask and seeing that it's done its job. I don't know if there's anything better than that. So that's my answer.
Yeah, I agree. I've seen some of the aircraft modelers when they'll do the zeros, the red circle on there, and they'll put the white behind it, and it's just, and when they pull that off, it's so satisfying, the look on their face and stuff like that. And I definitely agree. That's a really good.
I'll even watch reels. If Rick has a new reel and he's pulling off paint masks, I'll be like, oh yeah.
It's always nice to see those failures, right?
Well, speaking of Rick, what is your favorite part?
Well, screw you and your caveats at the end. Honestly, I do enjoy all the aspects, all those different processes. We've talked about this before. I'm kind of a one model at a time guy. So all those steps take place through each and entire build. So it's, picking out the model, looking at references, deciding what I want to do. I enjoy that part of it. Most of my models end up on some sort of a base. So I obviously enjoy that part of it. I think kind of my golden period in the process, if my favorite part perhaps, is that part where you've got the base colors on, whether, tank or whatever it is, and I start the weathering process and I just have a bit of section done and I can see it's going the way it should be going. And I think that's the part that gets me most excited. And that's not to say I don't lose my mojo someplace on the other side of the vehicle, because now it's 2 days later and I'm still doing the same damn thing. But that's kind of the golden place right there, is that part where you start making it come to life in my world.
Yeah, that's pretty. I like it when you, like you say, you have that one spot where you've been working on for a little while, and then everything else is that base color, and you have that one spot. Another great point, Mr. Jim Bates. What do you think?
Well, I got to start this with a caveat. I'm a failed history major, so it's the research, it's the digging into primary sources. In fact, I'm so bad at it that I do the research and don't build the model. As I think John Benani was sad to learn, I spent quite a bit of time researching Canadian hurricanes. And when we were up at Flying Heritage, he asked me an innocuous question, and I think he still regrets it to this day because of the just granular detail it went into. But I really enjoy, and I don't do as much as a writing as I used to, but I really enjoy just doing the research, looking at things, and kind of looking at things with different eyes. It seems to me in our hobby, a lot of the books just repeat what was in other books. And I think we've hit a point that we're now so far away from a lot of these things. People are actually going back to primary sources and looking at that stuff. And photographs are amazing. And what happens to me, and this is the bad part, is I get all inspired to build a model for about a week and a half. And then I find new pictures and get all inspired to build a model for a week and a half. So I have a lot of models that have about 2 weeks work on them. And then I find a new picture. I'm like, hey, squirrel, let's do this. So, yeah. And I should joke that at this point, I should just give up the modeling and start Jim Bates Model Research Service. Because if you're looking for anything about Canadian or British stuff, hit me up. I'll probably help you.
Go ahead.
I can attest to that because I just did that Spitfire, and Jim and I, I don't do airplanes that often, but as soon as I started working on a Spitfire, here's Jim with his hand in the air saying, I can help you. I've got this, I got that, and everything else. And, going back to what maybe our favorite parts of this whole process might be, that's actually a very important part of this process when you get dialed in with your community, your friends and fellow modelers. And it can be a different community, a different friend, different modeler on every project that has some bit of information. Grant's helped me on certain things. Scott's helped me on certain things, a number of people, too many to be named. And that's where, when we go to, we'll talk about these later, the shows that we're going to, that's why when we show up at the door and we've never met somebody in person, we all still know each other because we've had these contacts. We have this relationship already, just even through the internet, sharing photographs back and forth. So real quick, kudos to Jim because he did help me a lot with that Spitfire.
Yeah, it's, Jim is a very helpful guy. I mean, I really do appreciate him in that aspect. And, like my wife says, we're like a silent mafia of people. So when we go to shows, it's like, I don't know your face and I've never met you in person, but we've talked so much in the past. So it's like, it's like coming home. And so that's the fun part about it. Doug Reed, what about you? What's your favorite part?
I'll get to that in a moment. I really want to second what Rick said, the whole community aspect. That is what it's all about for me in this hobby, and more on that later, I suppose. But yeah, so I like to build. I'm a builder. I'm an engineer by trade. I like putting stuff together. I'll say I am mostly out of the box, but I love adding some PE, some resin, and I've gotten into some scratch building over the last couple of years. When we did the Sherman build, I did a conversion with scratch building for my M12 and M30. And man, I liked it. So I'm going to be doing more of that as well. So that's mainly it for me. The research thing is funny. I say I like research, but I think I don't know. I don't know if I have the patience for it. But one thing I want to know is when I put the markings on a kit, I want to know what it did, where it was from, and the markings have to be real. I don't like quote fake or, whatever, generic markings for the most part. But yeah, so definitely the building part of it. And, and I'm going to blame you guys on something. You talked about bases or dioramas. I don't really do dioramas. I mean, I haven't. But, okay, I have a Verlinden bridge on order, so I may do that.
Okay.
But bases, you guys have corrupted me because I've always just put it on the carpet,
yes,
on the table or on a wood base. But no, I'm now starting to want to put terrain on it. So, Rick, I've got some of your products that I'm using for basing, just basic stuff. And I'm liking it. And my grandson is liking it too. So when I work with him, he wants to do more. So there you go.
It's all about corruption, one member at a time.
Right. That's it. It's working.
I got a big box of Kool-Aid.
So you'll see if I get into the dioramas, I'll come back and blame you again. So
remember, Doug, you can always blame Bonani. That's what we all say here. So
there you go.
Doug, how about yourself? What's your favorite part?
Well, it used to be just starting a kit, because there's nothing like breaking open a box and starting to cut things off the sprues and starting and having that vision for the future. But lately, I've really come to appreciate trying new things when I'm building. Not that I always do. Sometimes I just want to build for building's sake and just get it done, just so I can complete something, and then that kind of gets the mojo rolling. But I'll give an example, a couple examples actually. On this Messerschmitt, just the other night I was working on it, and I used the masking tape to make seatbelts, and I posted to one of our chat groups, and I said, "Hey, any ideas, any advice to on how to improve this would be appreciated." And not 3 minutes later, Steve Baker sent him back. He said, make some buckles, make some attachment points for those things. And he even included a picture of what somebody else had done. So the next thing I know, I'm pulling out wire. I'm like, first I complained, but it's hard, come on. But I pulled out some wire and I made some little attachment points. And another thing that makes it fun is when you're trying new things, especially when you're using new tools, like something you've never used before. I've probably got 6 pairs of tweezers at my bench, and I finally found a pair of tweezers that actually works for me. I finally got some of the Tankcraft titanium tweezers, and those things are so sharp they're dangerous, but they'll pick things up without throwing them across the room. They won't come off the end and go pew, and you're gone. You're never going to see that part again. I was able to pick these tiny little 48 scale attachment points for those seatbelts up with it and put it right where I wanted it to be.
And they don't magnetize like carbon steel tweezers.
Exactly.
Right. So just that was so satisfying, and I'm very happy with the result. And I love the advice I got on everything. And the other thing I found that I enjoy doing when it comes to new things is basing, like we've discussed already. My little M8 howitzer that I did for the 48 and 48, I put it on a base, and the base is really what makes that thing pop. Yeah. And that's, something we learned from Rick at last year in San Marcos, a lot about basing.
I need to get some more Kool-Aid.
Get grape. I like grape.
The popping part is right.
Grape, okay. I was wondering what, orange, grape, strawberry? I'm not sure.
Yeah, Doug, you're right, 100%. Your base on that thing looks, fabulous. And like you said, it just pops that whole thing off, and I like your comment about, I didn't think about that one too, is when you first open the box, there's that thing when you open the box and then you have that new model right in front of you, especially if it's something that you've been waiting for a little while and stuff like that. You're really looking forward to. There's that,
the manufacturers, they spray that new car smell. Like when you buy a new car, they spray that in your kit. So when you open the kit, you're like,
yeah. It is. And I think one thing also is that being an older guy myself is that back when in the day Verlinden when they used to make kits, they had this resin, the smell of the resin. I don't know. And every time I go to like a swap meet or a show and they have extra parts and they have those old Verlinden kits, I just sit there and I open the box and I smell the resin like something.
I literally I can smell that right now.
Yep. Yeah, it's out there. I tell you, that smell will never leave my senses. It's crazy. Appreciate everybody's comments on this. And I want to hear what you guys out there think. What is your favorite part? Is it the building referencing? Is it the building? Is it super detailing? Is it basing? But the caveat still stands. You can't say all of it. So give me your specific things you like about building. When you sit down and you think about it, there is that one part that everybody has that they love. Jim was talking about some decals that don't, that doesn't have the stars and bars in the middle of the Oregon National Guard, which is unusual, and we talked with our guest today, and he has, certain things he likes. So it's great. There's 1,000 things out there for everybody. All right. I am going to pass it over to Jim Bates right now, and he's going to take us into the next section.
All right. It's time to talk about models from the Plastic Posse group we like. And I do have to admit, we'll talk about models in a second, but the best photo in the Plastic Posse group does appear to be Aaron Armour judging in somebody's living room in preparation for amps. So that is the winner of the Posse group this week. I will also say my favorite model in the posse group this week wasn't even a model. It was Nukeman Mike's son's artwork trying to butter him up to go to amps. So I think we need to get him to make more of those, put them on the posse merch sites and sell some of those and make him famous. And if you really want a model, I was kind of impressed just because it was the weirdest thing ever. Martin Drayton did, I think it's a Gundam head, which kind of impressed me because I'd never seen anything like that before. What about you, Rick? What did you like?
Well, I have, speaking of regrets, I was on the fence of whether or not to go to amps or not. And I did not. But now this week, I've seen the photographs of people getting ready to go to amps, putting their boxes of models between the seats, under their feet, in the rooms as they display them on the tables at their hotel room, pre-amps, and now they're on the tables at amps. And there looks to be some fabulous works there. So I'm enjoying seeing that it kind of brings me back to the old days, when even before social media, but when you'd wait for the magazine to come out post show at some point in time, from some big European show or whatever. And so being able to see this kind of coming in, dribbling in day by day is kind of, it's not like being there. And speaking of like being there, I've noticed a lot of the photographs of people getting socializing, as we were talking about earlier, going out to dinner and such like that. And I know how much fun that is. And so, kudos to everybody who's out to amps right now. I know you're having a great time, and I'll see you at some shows coming up.
There's room on the FOMO bus for you, man. Here's a seat.
Yeah, at the back of the bus.
Hey, that's where I sit. So
I'll give everybody a tip for mental health. Stay off social media this weekend, because then we won't have to see the amps. Now, the problem is there'll be another model show next week. So, hey. All right, Doug, number one, what's your favorite model in the posse group this fortnight?
I found it's a Renault R35 light infantry tank from Oscar Ebri Casola. Very nice. I love the paint. I love the little tank. The little tanks are kind of awesome. The paint job's great. The weathering is wonderful. It even has mud working through the running gear. And it looks natural. It looks like it wasn't just slapped on. It was very well thought out. Very well executed kit with everything he did with it.
All right, let's stay in Utah and go to our fearless leader, Mr. FOMO. What was your favorite thing this week in the posse group?
Well, as usual, there were a lot of really good ones. One that I almost chose was French modeler did like the front of an industrial building. This is really, really kind of cool, but sorry, Spud is back on the Achilles project, and oh my gosh, he posted some shots of the weathering of the interior that he's been doing with oils and a little bit of metallic pigment. He's worked on the gun breech, and now he's starting on the Mickey Mouse camo scheme, and so that's my winner. He does that scheme like nobody else. I really love the Mickey Mouse scheme and his weathering and like I think somebody was mentioning earlier when we were talking about the new Andes kit in 1/16 scale. I think, Spud is definitely one of the leaders in that arena. He just has really mastered the art of using that large scale to his advantage, where he's taking section by section and almost doing, weathering it like we build in sub-assemblies, almost that kind of approach. And it just looks terrific. So anyway, great job, John, as always.
So if you're keeping track on your posse scorecard, Scott both hates decals and loves Mickey Mouse. Over to Mr. Reed in Oregon. What did you like in the posse group this week?
All right. Well, I'm going to, it's funny. We need more airplanes on this site. I'm sorry, but I'm going to go with James Jensen. He has a Panzer IV in progress, a Panzer IV-J with a really nice whitewash scheme on it. And I'm kind of stuck on whitewash schemes. That's something I really want to learn to do. So I thought it was very well done. He's in progress on the build. He's got everything done, looks like, except maybe the bogies and the tracks and all. But that caught my eye for sure. So very good. Very nice work, James. That's
a good choice, Doug. And, there's a guy on this call, Mr. Lawler, who's really good at those winter schemes.
Yeah. It's funny. My friend Henry and I were challenging each other. He did a 72nd Panzer III, adding some snow and the like to it, and a base. So I'm on the hook. So, all right, cool.
God, don't blame me.
Well, I am going to say that the way we can increase more airplanes in the posse is the next person I'm going to call on needs to build an airplane. So, Grant, I challenge you to build an airplane in 2024. And what was your favorite model in the posse this week?
Well, first of all, thanks. Second of all, I want to shout out Pat McGrath, a great guy, fantastic. He's such a super nice guy. Our Irish contingent over there. He's our guy, and I like Pat a lot. He's such a great sculptor. He does some good. He's a great artist himself. He's an actor. He's everything. But he's scratch building a spaceship right now, and he's using and I don't know if I pronounce this right, even though it's a Maquet thing. That's very good. It's the Euclid yogurt container from overseas, I believe. And I think that's the name of it. And he's using a vitamin bottle, and he's using styrene parts and parts out of stretch sprue and parts that he's out of his spare box. And it's just a great little kit. It's when you do that, when he's doing that self-build stuff, I love that. It's such neat. You see the artistry in it, the interest in it and the love for it. And, that Pat, you do fantastic job and keep it up, and really, really do like what you're doing there.
It is a cool build. That's a good choice. And Doug 3, Grant actually has the same kit that Doug's working on right now. So he has an aircraft.
Two aircraft, because I gave him a Tamiya P-38, and then you gave him a Tamiya 109, right?
Yeah.
So
if
you're going to build an aircraft, 148 Tamiya is the way to go. So if you don't know what we're talking about, please join the Posse Facebook group. There is tons of great modeling in there, tons of other things. You get lots of FOMO just by being there, so you may want to mute it on weekends. But during the week, there's lots of beautiful models to work on. So now I'm going to turn it over to Scott and Doug, who are going to talk about upcoming model shows and events. And I'm glad I don't have to read all these.
Yeah, I'll read a few of these, and then Doug will bail me out because there's a lot here. It's great being in show season. This is the best time of the year for model builders to go collaborate and be inspired by other modelers. So let's start out with the Tulsa Modelers Forum and the Tulsa Miniature Motor Works. They're proud to present the Route 66 Model Expo. The show is going to be Saturday, April 20th, so really, really soon, at Park Church of Christ in Tulsa, Oklahoma. The show will follow the lead of PAXCon and many other shows, and they are going to gold, silver, bronze. So great job, guys. Good luck with that. For more details, you can check with Casey Gray on Facebook. Can-Am Con 2024 is presented by the IPMS Champlain Valley and Mount Mansfield Scale Modelers. That show is also being held on Saturday, April 20th, and it's at the Williston National Guard Armory in Williston, Vermont. Show begins at 9 a.m., and their theme this year is the Junkyard. For 2024, they've added a Gundam category. An entrance can choose display only, and 2 models or less are included in your price of admission, which is only $1. That's pretty awesome. Check out the Mount Mansfield Scale Modelers Facebook page for more info, or you can contact Ron Hogue at badcheck75, that's BADCHEK 75 at hotmail.com. IPMS Seattle will hold their spring show on April 27th, and it's going to be at the Renton Community Center. You can see www.iPMS-seattle.org to get more information. And Jim and Rick, I think you guys are going to go to that show, correct?
Yes, sir.
I will be there.
And Doug
will be there. Doug, are you coming up?
Yeah.
Excellent.
We'll be up as well.
Yeah, he's got a display of airplanes he's going to show me.
There you go. So
Excellent.
The Pacific Northwest contingent will be there in force.
I can impress upon Rick to teach me how to use the AK pencils, because I've bought them, but I'm still a little unsure.
Oh, so I need to bring pencils with me now. Okay.
No. I can bring the pencils. I just need your brain to show me how to use them.
Fair enough. Okay.
All right. And the last one for me, May 3rd and 4th is the 81st annual MFCA Show and Mart. This will be held at the Radisson Hotel Philadelphia East in Traverse, Pennsylvania. I hope I said that right. It's really cool. Calvin Tan is going to be a featured speaker at this year's MFCA show. He's going to be giving a presentation on painting with the AK Gen 3 acrylics. Man, I wish I was going to be there. You can find out more details over at www.mfcaclub.com.
The Houston Model Mania show will be held May 4th at the Stafford Center in Stafford, Texas, and has dual themes for 2024. May the 4th be with you and adversaries. They will have a great vendor area, an awesome facility, and a special Subarashi Mecha Award for the best mecha. They are also implementing a gold, silver, bronze system for their show. The Best of the West Model Show and Convention will be held Saturday, May 18th at the Orleans Hotel and Casino. This show is put on by a group of 5 different modeling clubs and runs from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Sounds like a lot of fun. Contact Jay Bergeron on Facebook for more details. And I think a bunch of us are going to be there too.
Yeah, if I can interrupt, got to say special shout out to Scott and the organizers. They have invited me and AK to be part of the vendor and demos teams there. And so that's now set up, and we're kind of doing some of the backside logistics on that, but we're ready to go. Speaking of pencils, if you want to learn how to use weathering pencils, I'll have them there. Jim, come on down.
Yeah, it's going to be.
Well, I will be there because it is not only the IPMS Best in the West show. It is also Jim Bates and Hank Knopfels' birthday celebration. So I will be partying like it's 1999.
Nice stuff. Well, you know what they say, what happens in Vegas, No, it's going to be so much fun. And Grant and Rick are going to be helping Scott paint some figures. Now it's going to be a great show. That club, Jay and Joe Porche, that group of modeling clubs down there, it's great. If you're in the area, go to the show. You're going to really, really enjoy it. So
yeah, they come to all our shows, so we should go visit theirs.
Absolutely. Also on May 18th, the Silver Wings Club in Sacramento presents SilverCon 2024. This year's theme is 1944. Doors open at 9 a.m. and the show will be held at the Town and Country Lutheran Church in Sacramento, California. For more details, check out IPMS Silver Wings on Facebook or contact Drew Savage. The 41st annual Smoky Mountain Model Con will be held on May 25th at the Knoxville Catholic High School Gymnasium in Knoxville, Tennessee. The show's theme is 1946 through 55, and all the deets can be found at www.knoxvillescalemodelers.com.
Thanks, Doug. Well, I also have some exciting news. As you've heard in a couple episodes before, a team of us here in Salt Lake City will be adding another open system model show to the calendar here in the Western U.S. on June 22nd here in Salt Lake City from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. We are pleased to present the first annual Rocky Mountain Expo. This show has been organized by several great modelers and friends, and this show is going to be a different kind of model show for modelers here in the Intermountain West. Our good friend Barry from Small Subjects, Barry Biediger, he's going to be our contest chair. Barry's also one of the organizers who helps put on the MMSI show, and so we're really excited about that. Our friends Grant and Mr. Lawler will be there. Doug 2 and Doug 3. We, of course, would love to see you there if you can come. As previously mentioned, it's an open format show. It's going to be very similar to other figure shows like MMSI and MFCA. Look for fewer categories. We're going to have pre-qualified experienced judges. Modelers' names will be featured on each display. And of course, we'll be using the gold, silver, bronze award systems. We'll be doing a spotlight feature probably in our next episode, but if not, the episode after that, where we'll have Barry and a couple of guys from the show group on to talk about exactly what you can expect. So anyway, we're really excited. It's the inaugural Rocky Mountain Expo, June 22nd, right here in Salt Lake City. We have a guest, Mr. Doug Reed. He is a longtime friend and patron. Another thing about Doug that I really want to kind of highlight for everybody is Doug has talked about community in this podcast, and we go to Washington, Doug's there. We go to, Salt Lake to, shows, Doug's there. I mean, he really, really supports the community out here in the West. He and the group that he's a part of up there, they are really fantastic in, kind of making sure that not only do they put on events in their area, but they attend other people's events, Boise and Reno and on and on and on. But anyway, we wanted to have Doug on and kind of press him about his modeling. So Grant, go ahead and take it away.
All right, Doug, you're now in the hot seat, formerly known as the Jim Bates seat. Well, I'm glad we got it cleaned for you. I'm sorry about that. So give us a little history about you. What do you like to build? When did you start building?
Let's see, a little bit of history. I grew up in upstate New York, and I started building there. My dad was a wooden ship modeler. A lot of evenings watching him work on the dining room table, and then I started to get into it. And I kind of jumped right to plastic after we did the normal balsa and tissue type stuff. And really from, probably middle school on, started building, continued building, even with marriage and kids and school, kind of dabbling in it, right? I was really into it growing up and still dabbled in it with a family. And then once the kids were grown and off to school or moving on, then I was way too far into it at that point. So here I am today. So yeah, that's kind of my history of that way. You mentioned what I like to build. Let's see. I really am pretty eclectic. I built ships. I built aircraft. I'm an aircraft guy at heart, but I really enjoy the military vehicles as well. All scales. I built 144th, 72nd armor, 148th, the whole range. So I'm pretty open. It's kind of like, I think what Jim said earlier, it's whatever the current shiny object swirl is that catches my eye. So I'm pretty open. But right now I'm doing an aircraft. I got some armor in the background.
So if you don't mind me asking, what aircraft are you working on right now?
So I've got the F-51 that I've got going. I've got a Edward 72nd BF-110 working on in the background as well. It's their C6, C4 version. No, I forget now. C version, I guess it is. And I have that going. Those are my two main ones. I have a third one, which is a resin Lenig. It's an old resin kit that I'm doing for a build up in Seattle that they're going to have for a display later. So anyway, those are the main ones.
That's great. And I can see behind you there, our listeners can't see, but you have a heck of a reference, looks like, library going on behind you. So it looks like you definitely, you've got, what you're looking at.
That's my other addiction. In addition to my model stash is reference material that probably have way more than I actually ever use, but I like it. So, yeah.
Doug, what do you think drew you to modeling, scale modeling?
Oh, that's a good question. I think two things. I think the history. I love the history, right? And I love, like we talked about earlier, the idea of enough research that I know where a model came from. Where it served, who served with it. I'm very intrigued by that. So I think recreating that, I read a lot of military history and history in general. And then just building and finishing. And it's really, for me, the sense of artwork. When I'm done, to see a model that looks good, that's really satisfying. So it's kind of that combination of things, I think, that drew me to it. Even as a kid, I really enjoyed that.
I'm confused. What does this finishing mean?
It's funny. I don't know if anybody else does. Building and all that, it all comes pretty natural, so to speak. But man, when I get to the airbrush and the oils and the finishing part, it is an intimidation factor to overcome. But once you get into the flow of it, I don't know, it goes okay. But you got to get over that hump, at least for me.
Finishing, I think, Jim, that's that part where you move the model over to the side of your desk and you open another box.
Oh, that part I understand. All right. I thought you were talking about moving the model into the display case. That's the part I don't get. But, hey, maybe that's just me.
My unbuilt stash, or what do you call it? My shelf of doom is pretty large. So,
tell us a little bit about the local community where you're at, Doug. I know you're a big part of that, but talk to us about, your fellow modelers and what that's like up there.
Yeah, sure. So we have a local club that I'm the president of our local club, the Oregon Mid-Valley Modelers. We are centered out of Albany, Oregon, and I live nearby in Corvallis, and we kind of cover what we consider the Mid-Valley area. And we're very active. And just as a piece of trivia, I've recently become the IPMS Region 7 coordinator. So I just picked that up earlier this month or in March. And so I'm starting to network out beyond that. But we've worked really hard along the lines of community, like we've talked about, right? I mean, we really want our modeling club to be very inclusive and very encouraging to other clubs. We don't, we downplay the competition part of it. We really want people to feel comfortable in coming in and just whatever skill level they bring. And then, as we've kind of alluded to, we really work hard to try to travel, go to shows. It's probably about 4 or 5 of us that will travel pretty regular out of the group and do that. We've got a sister group up in Salem that has really tried to revive itself. And I've been working with Dan Tonkin. He's their new president, and he and I have been working together to help them kind of revive, and they're doing great. We have a new club that started down south of Eugene in Cottage Grove, and they meet on Tuesday nights. And so they are the Tuesday Night Model Club, and they had their first show. And so we went down, supported them and the like. So that's kind of our thing. And we've worked with Jim, of course. We've been up in Seattle a lot. And we really a shout out to you guys, Jim, because you guys have really adopted us in a sense as a smaller club. And it's been a great, fun partnership. It's been very good. So,
Doug, we certainly missed you this year at Model Mania. So I'm looking forward to seeing you at the spring show. And then hopefully you'll be back next year.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I can attest. I mean, I'm up in Portland, and our local club isn't as active as it used to be, but the Mid-Valley guys have really stepped up lately. They just had a swap meet in Albany, last month? Is that what it was?
Oh, down in Willamina. Salem actually put that on.
Yeah.
But we have one coming up in June. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, you got the swap meets that you do. You got the local shows. Speaking of Cottage Grove, that's my hometown. That's where I grew up. Went to school in Corvallis. So you're part of my home team here. And so we just all need to get a little bit closer together here in order to coordinate. We could be quite the powerhouse for sure.
Yeah, I like that idea. We started. I've talked to Keith a little bit, and we've picked up the fall show from them. We'll be doing that in September. We did it last year, trying to get Oregon kind of reinvigorated that way. We'll be down in Albany with the show in September again. Something else we've introduced that's kind of taken hold. Cottage Grove did this. We've introduced a People's Choice contest. And so the idea is it's a swap meet, very informal. And hey, bring a model, display it, we'll everybody vote on it. And we've done it at our swap meets. Cottage Grove did it recently, and very low pressure, very, very fun event. And people seem to like it.
Well, that sounds really good. I'll have to get more information from you on that and, travel up to that show if we can.
Yeah, sure. That would be great.
So I have another question. Doug, what inspires you? Like when you go to model shows and you're kind of looking around, what gets you excited? What gets that mojo refilled for you when you see other models or talk to other modelers, whatever that it is?
That's good. I like I said earlier, I really enjoy the community aspect. That always inspires me. I love going to model shows like somebody mentioned, where you know people that you just kind of know because you've connected with them in some way, and maybe you've seen them once or twice. That's always invigorating for me. It's really good. I like, of course, seeing the models. We have people in the club that are like, oh, I don't know, my model's not good enough. If I should, and I'm like, dude, put it on the table. People want to see models on the table. So I'm always encouraging people that way. And it's the same way when I peruse the aisles at contests. It's fun to look at stuff and see what people do. And you don't care if they're award winners or not. There's a lot of good work out there. And when I judge models, it's the same thing. It's like models that you maybe have to not qualify. I'm like, man, I have that on my table. It's like, there's a lot of good stuff. So yeah, so really it's a combination of the community, but seeing good work and interacting with people about it. It's really, really good.
So, can you give me a breakdown or give us a breakdown of, what is it? Mostly aircraft? Do you have a wide mix? Do you have, some Gundam? Do you have a whole group of people up there, or is it focused one area? Or
in terms of our local, it's okay. So in terms of our local group, it's primarily military aircraft, armor, that type of thing. Right. However, the Gundam community is really making inroads, and we've got currently 3 guys in our club, in our own club, and between us and Salem that are all into Gundams. They've attended. There's a Gundam club up here I'm trying to connect with, met with up I guess it's in the Portland area. And so that's having a big influence. A lot of people are building those within the local area. Some of the sci-fi stuff, especially the Star Wars items, those are real popular as well. And I've to the point where I've got, I don't know if it's Bandai, I'm not sure. I've got the 72nd X-Wing fighter that at some point I'm going to be on the hook to build. And I'm not a sci-fi guy, but it would be good to do. So, and I have
It's
tried.
okay. We still like you.
I was just going to say, I have a 72nd Bandai X-Wing over here. And Doug, if you want to do a buddy build, let's do that.
I'll hit you up on that. That would be okay. So
Yeah.
I can think of someone else that would join you in that.
Yes.
I can imagine. I thought about you.
That's right. Who shall build a Bandai Star Wars kit? Doug, would you do it?
I'll think about it.
I would, like I said, primarily military, split between aircraft and armor. But the sci-fi, the Gundam builds are making a strong inroads. I definitely see that more and more. Automobiles, I'll just throw this out. We have one guy in our club, Arthur, who just he's a car guy, and he always builds cars. And I'm going to be up at the Saba show up in Portland on the 4th, and I'm like, okay, I need to buy a car. So I'm probably going to I'm looking at Formula One just because it's pretty cool. So I'll probably be doing that in the next year.
I've got a quick question regarding the other groups, the sci-fi, especially Gundam. Are they generally being well received by the more traditional builders in your area?
I think I'm going to just speculate. I think it's a work in progress. I did meet with the Gundam group at the swap meet in Milamina. We had a nice discussion. I've actually invited them to help us judge at our contest in the fall, since we're not experts on that at all, or even determining categories, right? So we're working to bridge that. And some of that came up, about the acceptance part. And, my goal is to bridge that and really, really see us more as an integrated hobby that way.
Excellent.
Man, that's awesome. Maybe get Cobra Plod down there to support you with that. He just, oozes enthusiasm for Gunpla.
I'll say one more thing, too, that I'd like to see more integration with the car community as well. The Saba group in Portland is a very strong car club, and they have their show coming up in May. And same thing, approaching them about, hey, help us out. We don't have car builders so much. Help us out on our show. Tell us how to categorize these things and help us judge. So looking forward to that.
I love that approach. One of the things we're doing down here in Salt Lake City is very similar. Like our board, we have assignments on outreach, reaching out to the car community and the Gunpla community and the figure painting community and the Warhammer community. It's really, you guys know how I feel about this. I don't need to ramble, but we all do the same thing, right? It doesn't matter what we build. It's all the same thing. So anyway, I'm going to do it. Somebody has to do it. All right, Doug, here we go. What is your magnum opus build? What's that project that you've dreamed about that someday you just really want to do?
All right. I have obviously thought about this answer because I knew it was coming. It's actually something I have sort of started on. So a little bit of history. My childhood ended kind of roughly through some family stuff and all. And I had in the early 70s purchased the initial release of the Tamiya 48 scale Lancaster. When that came out in 74, I think, something like that. And so I never got to finish it. And it's since gone. It's been lost to history that way. So for a lot of years, for just closure, I thought I need to build that kit. So I finally found it. One of my early visits up to Seattle at one of the vendor tables, I picked up an original sealed box of it and probably way overpaid for it, but so be it. And so I broke it out and I've told my club, I said, I've got to build this kit just for my own personal closure and to do it. And so I'm working on that. I just started it. I've made the corrections to the window, all the famous corrections for that kit. And now I'm stuck because I'm like, since I've done some scratch building, I'm like, dang, there's some stuff I need to add to this. And so I'm working through that. And my friend Colin is a big British expert. And so he's helping me out with references and all. So that's the build. To do that, and I'm probably going to do it in way more detail than I could have done when I was 16 or 17. So we'll see how it goes. And it's on my bench off and on as I get time to work on it. So there you go.
Awesome. Well, we really appreciate, again, your support for the Posse community. We really appreciate your support, again, for all the shows that you guys are going to and supporting and building. That's what this is all about. So kudos to you. Glad you're feeling a little bit better. Glad to see you back in the saddle again, and we'll bump into each other at a show here pretty soon.
Sounds good. And thank you guys. I'm glad to be here. It's fun and appreciate all the work you guys do at this level, right? Same thing. promoting the hobby community and making this thing fun. So thanks again.
Well,
We'll see you in a couple of weeks. And
we have a good time. Yeah. You guys are going to have a good time at that show. Wish we could get up there. All right. Well, let's kick it over to Doug for some feedback.
All right. I'm going to start with a couple of just nice statements here. Brad Guy, our friend from Denver, said, listen to episode 90 today. Thanks for another episode. Love your coverage of Commies Fest, and I'm so happy you like it. Yes, we're trying to move it into April next year. No telling if that will work, though. We'll keep you updated.
Nice. That'd be great.
Yeah. Cameron Peterson says, great episode. And I'd like to find out more about the Rocky Mountain Expo. Sounds like next episode, we're going to give you a lot more information. So that'll be good.
Yep. You can also find a Facebook page for the Rocky Mountain Hobby Expo. And also we have a website. So check it out there or just stay tuned.
All right. We had a little controversy, I guess, in our last episode. I wasn't on it. So I can't defend myself. And this really isn't about defense. Just Jeff Morris thinks that our discussion was not very charitable, and we perhaps ignored the buyer's perspective when it comes to new kits, to buying kits. He uses examples such as impulse buying, non-modeler buying. He says reviews are sometimes skewed because the reviewer doesn't want to sound dumb for spending the money on stuff that's not that great. He just thought maybe we could have been a little more charitable in our discussion. So there's that.
Yeah, I don't think that was Jensen's intention. He was, it was kind of his discussion point. I think what he was just saying was, as modelers, we're blessed with all this information out there in the form of reviews and, online resources and YouTube videos and, online builds and everything. And if that doesn't work, I think, just posting and saying, hey, Doug, Rick, Grant, what did you guys think of this kit? Did anybody get this? And, what do you think? And so really, hopefully that's what most people took away from that. Sorry to hear that it kind of came across that way. That's not really what we do. But it's really more of just we have a lot of resources out there and a lot of things you can tap into before you make a purchase.
Yeah, I think JC Osborne agreed with us there. He said, listening to the Posse podcast and the point Jensen raised about modelers asking about how good a kit might be. He really appreciated that, especially after they bought it. I completely agree. There are literally tons of reviews out there on the interwebs, and another two that weren't even mentioned that can be gold. Scalemates. You can find links in many cases to actual instructions, third-party accessories, and places where you can buy said kit. And apparently there's another one, but for some reason I didn't copy that down. Sorry. That's one of JC's examples. We're going to stop at one. Sorry. So that's was, I think, generally Jensen's point that there are lots of places we can get information. Anyhow, that's what I have today for feedback. I know there have been a lot more things said, and we appreciate everything that people have shared with us. And we ask you to just keep writing, keep sharing what you see, what you hear. Are you a member of the Plastic Posse group page on Facebook? If you're not, you should be. Remember that you can send your feedback and suggestions to us via email at plasticpossepodcast@gmail.com. I'm going to pass it over to Grant. He's going to intro our next interview.
All right, everybody. So this last couple days ago, me and Scott had a chance to sit down and talk to John Rosengrant, a fabulous guy, a really nice guy. Spent about 90 minutes with us listening to two guys ask him questions about just about everything. It was a great interview. If you don't know who John Rosengrant is, he's got several Emmys. He is a Oscar-nominated special effects artist. He has his own Wikipedia page, sorry. He is mostly, known for his work with Jurassic Park, Terminator, so on and so forth. He is Avatar, Aliens. You just go down the list, and he's had a part in it. Spent 40 years working in Hollywood in that industry. He worked with Stan forever. Stan Winston, yeah, forever. Sorry, me and Stan were close, so I can just use it. But he was a great guy. He's a fantastic modeler. He is an MFCA Best of Show winner and champion. He is an MFCA Grand Master. He is a renowned painter, sculptor, model builder, diorama builder. He is probably one of the luckiest guys in the world because he owns the Shep Payne diorama of the two Hanamogs with the rocket launcher that has the rocket launcher that was on the cover of his diorama book, Shep Payne's diorama book. To me, that's just phenomenal. But we did, like I said, we and Scott had a great time talking to him, and we're about ready to share with you. All right, so here we go.
Welcome into another interview on the Plastic Posse podcast. My name is Scott, and today I am joined by Mr. Grant Mayberry. How you doing, Grant?
I'm doing great. I'm doing really good.
Awesome. And then, of course, we have a guest, and our guest of honor, as we were discussing right before we started recording, is the terrible at mediocrity, Mr. John Rosengrant. How are you doing, John?
I'm doing great. It's good to be talking with you guys.
John is a gentleman, and both Grant and I have gotten to know him a little bit at the MMSI show in Chicago each year. John has, as you'll hear very, very soon, done kind of good, kind of well at that show. I think he's getting the hang of this modeling thing. So I am going to kind of do a summary of, for those of you that don't know John, kind of summary of some of the things he's done. And he's promised that if I make any mistakes, he will let me know. But anyway, as far as John's day job, John went to Louisiana State University and went into animatronics and special effects, and then ended up relocating to Los Angeles and working with a guy you might have heard of, Stan Winston, and worked with the Stan Winston studio for a couple of decades. And he worked on some projects that I feel like some of you might have heard about. Terminator, the Jurassic Park series, Aliens, Predator, Edward Scissorhands, Avatar, a few little, indie movies like that. And eventually John co-founded a company called Legacy FX with a couple of other people, and worked on some additional projects, John Carter of Mars, Real Steel, which we'll talk about here in a second, and also Twilight Breaking Dawn. So again, some projects you probably heard about. Is nominated for an Academy Award, which is a first for this podcast, for Best Visual Effects for Real Steel, which is a movie that I own and I really enjoy. Great, fun movie. Really like that. And John also won 3 Primetime Emmy Awards.
That's right.
For a little show called The Mandalorian. You guys might have heard of that one again with the child or Baby Yoda or Grogu, whichever way you like to go. So John's had obviously a great career. We're kind of joking.
I've had a very blessed career. I've had some amazing opportunities, and I am sincerely grateful to have helped to create these iconic characters along with all my teammates along the way.
I think it really kind of plays into, as we'll talk about when we get to the modeling stuff, your ability to tell stories with your hands and your concepts and everything, which are just tremendous. So he also builds models and is also kind of good at that too. He's a renowned model maker, painter, and sculptor. He's worked with Alpine Miniatures, S&T Productions, Custom Dioramics, Warriors, just to name a few. And he's also been recognized at the highest levels of his model making. I mentioned MMSI, which is where we met John, and he's won the prestigious MMSI Chicago Award in addition to his many medals. And last year, he also won the Best of Show award at that show. He's also been recognized, among other things, as a Grand Master by the MFCA Showing Club. On top of all these accomplishments, I think, as you can tell already, John is a great guy. He's very generous. He's fun to talk to, and he's just very, very passionate about what he does. So, how'd I do, John? Did I do okay?
No, you did amazing. You know more about me than me.
You gotta watch out for the Google. So just a lifetime of recognition again for your storytelling efforts and everything. So I'm going to ask you kind of an initial question, and then we'll kind of kick back and forth between Grant and I. But obviously, you were interested in movies, early on, got into it in college, and that took you to Los Angeles. Maybe where does that journey start for you, John? What drew you to kind of be interested in movie making?
It was probably when I was 5, 6 years old. I remember my mom would put on we were living in New Jersey at the time, and we put on some of the New York stations, and I saw King Kong and The Bride of Frankenstein and Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein and The Wolfman, Dracula. And I became really absorbed into those Universal monsters. And I think at that point in time, I wanted to be Jack Pierce. I wanted to do these makeups. I wanted to make these monsters. That was my early calling, I think, towards the film industry, was in the monsters and doing all that. Interestingly enough, around that same time, I started to build model kits, and I started with those Universal monsters, the Aurora kits. And I think I must have built and painted those things over and over again. The Frightening Lightning, I've got to go buy that one now. You'd save up your money from cutting grass or whatever, and you get on your bicycle and you go ride up to the 5 and Dime, and you can buy these things for like $1. They were 99 cents back in the day. But, and then I also started getting into little 1/72nd scale World War I planes. And I started reading about history and started getting involved in model building along as a parallel course with the monsters in filmmaking. If I wasn't trying to turn myself into the Wolfman or something, I was building these model kits, and it was a lot of fun. But the real epiphany for the modeling side, and my stories, like so many others, Shep Payne. I saw that diorama with the two 251s, bought that magazine, and I actually own that diorama now.
Oh, wow.
I ended up buying that when it came up for sale, because that was such an influence on me that I felt like I just had to have it. But it really was. And I was looking at what Shep Payne had done with these Tamiya figures and, really brought them to life. And I thought, God, that's amazing. I got to learn to sculpt figures. So that was a self-taught process along with the movie stuff, because back when I was doing this in the 70s and, I got into the film industry in the early 80s, there was no film schools, there might have been some film schools, but it was more about directing or camera work and that type of thing. It wasn't covering special effects on any, or animatronics and special effects makeup. So that's my formative years of getting into all of this stuff.
Well, that's terrific. First of all, I want to thank you. You mentioned that you own that diorama that Shep Payne did with those Hanumogs, and getting to you were generous enough to arrange for that to be at MMSI a couple of years ago, and getting to see a diorama that a lot of us older guys, who grew up and really kind of revered Shep, but getting to see something like that in person, and then this year getting to see some of Shep's shadow boxes are just
the shadow boxes.
Truly inspirational.
He certainly inspired me. And, I had the privilege of getting to meet him. He used to come out to California and come to the Scam Show back in the day. And I took him on a tour of the Stan Winston studio. I think we might have been doing Jurassic Park at that time. So that was a cool thing for him. And he wrote me a really nice letter, which I have framed and I kept, and he was saying that a lot of people have been influenced by me, but it's nice to see someone that has, had the opportunity to take it to another level. And that really resonated with me, because Shep, when I was a teenager, in the 70s. I bought those horrible monogram kits, every single one of them, just to get the diorama tip sheet inside of them. And those kits really weren't that good, but didn't matter. I wanted that tip sheet in there because Shep worked miracles with them.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think if, model making obviously has evolved over the years, and, you might, somebody with a very, very critical eye might look at some of those older dioramas and boxes and say, well, those aren't, maybe as good as I was thinking. But it's like, in spite of the modeling or any specific element of the model making, what you can't argue with those is when you see those pieces in person is the storytelling. They're just as vibrant and alive as when he first did those pieces.
No, it's true. I mean, the storytelling, yes, technically this hobby, and luckily is evolving as Shep would have wanted it to. He certainly wanted it to. I think the good thing about it is yes, you're seeing the storytelling, but at the time he was doing this stuff, I mean, he was creating all this out of thin air. I mean, it's old-fashioned modeling skills, and he was building little movie sets with his dioramas, his boxes, and that's I have to try a box one day. I think it'd be fun, where you can control everything, the lighting and all that. But anyway, we'll see.
Yeah, it's like I was lucky enough to see them at MMSI last year. Also lucky enough to, as a first-time intern judge, I guess is what you call it. I was actually on your team, so that was very impressive. I appreciate that. That was probably the best part of the show. Well, not probably. It was the best part of the show for me. I appreciate
that could be
time.
helpful. Yeah.
Oh, just taking the time you did and pointing stuff out. I want to go back really quick. I didn't know you had the Shep Payne diorama. That's great. That is fantastic. I always wondered what happened to that. That was always one of those that one and the Sherman Calliope that was in the Battle of Walsh with the tree, and the yellow snow behind the tree and all that kind of stuff. Another great little story, which is fantastic. How did your model making and your day job basically? How did they mesh together really well? Did you have any? Were you able to carry back and forth? Skills.
There was a time when I first moved to Los Angeles and was getting into the film business. The first 3 years. I wasn't doing any modeling at all. I mean, I was all focused on, the movie side of it. And I think what happened was a similar epiphany that I had when I went off to college and was an art major is, you're in high school and you're thought of as a really good artist and all this. Then you go off to college and you realize everybody in the room was that person. They were the good artist in high school, and so now you're here, and that was a great introduction to learning and growing. And I don't know, I always took the road of, well, I'm not going to bring them down. I'm going to learn from them. And then when I got to Los Angeles, I saw the same thing. I met Stan Winston almost right away, and I thought, wow, okay, this is great. He's going to hire me and all. No way. He took a look through my portfolio, whipped through it, and he handed it back to me in about 5 minutes, if that. And he said, it reminds me of when I was starting out. He goes, well, have a look around if you want. And I was there for 2 hours, studying every square inch of that place. But what I learned is I've got a lot of work to do. I've got a lot to learn. And I always look at it that way. And I look at it, in the model world. If someone, kicks your butt and does an amazing piece, that's great. Study it, learn from it. Truly always try to make yourself better. Because I think when you stop growing, you stop getting better as an artist. That's my opinion. I mean, you get kind of stopped in a time warp. And I don't want to do that. I want to keep progressing, at least try to keep progressing.
That's a great point, and something that I haven't been to the MFCA show, but something I feel like the culture of what I've experienced at MMSI meeting, good people like yourself is that it's very encouraging. The people are very quick to kind of put their arm around you and say, okay, this is, if you have a question, let me help you. Let me show you what I did here. Did that start for you? Like you mentioned being inspired by the early monster movies, but, obviously Stan seems like he was a big influence on you.
He was a great mentor, great teacher, great artist, learned a lot from him. My film school was probably the first Terminator, James Cameron and Stan, and, baptism of fire. But boy, you learn that way. You learn, it's hands-on experience. It's not theory. You're not reading a book. You're doing it.
They just push you in the pool, huh?
What's that?
They just push you in the pool.
They push you in the pool, and you got to fake it till you make it. And you really do. And the thing is, when you're that young, you really think you're sort of fearless. What was that, 20 years old or something? You're kind of, your early 20s. You're fearless. You just, all right, I'm going to do this. I can do this. And, God, if I knew what I knew now, but it's okay. It's all how we learn. And as far as the show, it's such a small community. If we don't befriend each other and help each other in this community, it's a small world. It really is. We're living in the heyday of it right now, with 3D printed parts and things to soup up your kit and great kits coming out. And it's a great time to be modeling, but it's not a giant market. I'm sure it's not. I used to own the little company Warriors with Chris Morosco. When we got in, Verlinden had been around, and we sort of arrived on the scene, and I'm sure we stole some of his market share. But our idea was to try to bring to modelers things that you just couldn't get. And it was successful for quite a while until, things happen. But it was an interesting time, but it's not that big a world, the scale modeling.
Yeah.
And in some ways, I think it was bigger, but the fantasy has sort of become a big deal, especially in Europe. When you go to the European shows, fantasy, something like Monte Sansovino, the majority of the work there is fantasy oriented.
Yeah, I think it's the same way at SMC. In the Netherlands too. It's just it's I think it would probably be like, I haven't been, but I've seen things where they're talking like 80% fantasy and stuff like that. So
I would say so. That's probably what Monte Sansovino is like. I've been to that show several times. I've been to the show in Rome. I haven't been to Scale Model Challenge, but I do feel it's one of the best shows, just from the level of work that you see through photographs. And although Monte Sansovino is pretty incredible.
Yeah, that show that's on my bucket list. It's one of my bucket list shows. That
one is fun on a lot of levels besides just the models. They're fun guys, and it's set in an old town from the 1300s, and it's just kind of neat. You walk through the city gates and you see the De Medici symbol up above, and then you go into the little town, little restaurants, little hotels, but it is very charming. And for us Americans, we're not, we didn't grow up in rural Tuscany, in Italy. So it's pretty neat.
Much to our chagrin, right? Sounds like, in the industry, you kind of got pushed in the pool like we were talking about, where you got an opportunity to just go do it and everything. With regards to your modeling, kind of what inspires you there? What makes you, I think you do a lot of armor subjects and everything, but what really kind of draws you to the subjects that you model?
There's a few time periods that I really like. I do like the World War II, and I do like tying in those vehicles. And I'm sure that's a throwback to, the pain influence on me when I was younger. But I just think they're kind of cool. But to me, the vehicle by itself is sort of boring. I like the figures. I like the story that they have to tell. When you look at the photographs, these guys that are 19, 20 years old, they look like they're 35. And I had an opportunity for a collector to do a portrait of his dad, and he sent me all these pictures. And I had some pictures of his dad. I think he was 19 or something when he went in World War II. And he looks like a kid before he gets over there. And then the pictures when he came home, it's like it aged him 10 years. Just unbelievable. And I think I like telling those stories. There was painters that I loved, Howard Pyle and N.C. Wyeth, and those great American illustrators from around the turn of the century. I liked how they meshed history with figurative art and the level that they did it. But I think I might have learned a little storytelling from looking at all those paintings, because they were illustrating for magazines and books and things like that. So they really had to capture the essence of what was going on in the story. And so I don't know, I'm really drawn to whatever I'm doing, whatever time period it is, or whatever it is, I'm drawn to the characters, creating those characters, the figures. And even if it's a single figure, I want you to look at him and to really feel where he is or what he might be going through. You know, a bit of method acting. You know, you're thinking about, you're creating a story of this person in your head, and then you portray it.
Yeah, I definitely see that in your work. One that comes to mind was last year was you had a paratrooper on the back of a horse. Paratrooper looked like he was so tired, but the thing is you draw the horse into it too, like some people don't do, but you had the horse's head down. He just had that solemn look.
Yeah, and that came from another one of my influences too. That was commissioned by a young man who had Ron Bolstadt do a painting. And that painting was based on those photographs of those guys. And I'm sure they were dog tired. D+3, and you're not sleeping. You're behind the lines, and God knows how they got those horses from the Germans. And that's a story unto itself right there. I'm sure they didn't just find them.
Yeah.
But I'm sure they're exhausted, and they didn't have any Jeeps or anything, or they did, but they're not enough. So they would use those horses for patrols. And I always thought that was a fascinating idea. And I read about that when I was a teenager years and years ago. And when I was sent a picture of the painting and the commission was offered to me, I had to jump on that.
Yeah.
It was neat.
Yeah, it's a beautiful figure. I do notice a little bit that you are moving to a little bit bigger scale. You're into 1/16 a little bit, which is,
Well, I'm doing a 1/35 now.
Oh.
I do go back and forth. I think you can tell a bigger story with the 1/35. 1/16, you can see so much detail. Right. In those figures. It's kind of fun, and there's this whole flurry of these kits that are coming out now, and I don't know, I always liked big scale. One of the first things that I did for, I think it was Kieran, was this German machine gunner, and it was 1/9 scale.
Wow.
So basically 200 millimeter. I liked that scale because I saw in that British magazine, Military Modeling, Bill Hearn was his name, but he had done a lot of scratch-built figures to go on those Italeri motorcycles and Kubelwagens and all that kind of stuff. So that really captured my interest at the time. But 1/16 is a little bit smaller. It's a lot smaller than 1/9. But I did quite a series of 1/9 figures there for a while. And I've done a couple recently in the past decade, maybe the last 5 years, 6 years. it all blurs together. It seems like yesterday, but it was not. But the 1/16th, I think it kind of is, it's big, but it's not ginormous, not like 1/9 scale. For a lot of historical things, I like 75 millimeter too. I think that's a fun scale, basically 1/24th scale. But
Yeah,
1/35th, you can tell a bigger story with that.
You bring up 1/24th. I always kind of was wondering why military vehicles in that scale didn't catch on. Tosca did some vehicles in that scale, and Hasegawa even kind of got into that a little bit, but it just didn't seem to be that popular for whatever reason.
Yeah, I don't know why. I kind of was thinking that would have been a good scale. Back in the 80s, I guess it was the 80s, might have been 70s, they were doing those Tiger kits and Panthers and all that too in 1/24th. I think it was Bandai, but I would have thought it would have taken off, but it really didn't.
Yeah, some of it might be, timing too, because, Bandai had their 1/48 scale range and it didn't do very well. Eventually, they kind of discontinued it. But then Tamiya reintroduced their 1/48 scale range, and I think it's been hugely popular.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, with the 1/16th, you have to have space for it. That's for sure. Because these things they're bigger than you think they are.
they really are, especially the tanks. A Sherman. No, that's not a big tank. It's huge in 1/16th.
It's huge in 1/16th, and something like a Tiger 2. And
yeah,
I did at the last Chicago show. I had a full diorama with Africa Corps figures in a 1/16th scale Panzer III, but I also had a Tiger 1. And I cut it in half. I did, to take a page out of Chris Morosco's vocabulary. A wedgie, just because the tank was just so damn big. It's like, even half of this thing is enormous.
Yeah, you bring up the Panther diorama, which of course was best in show and deservedly so. You'd mentioned that you kind of think vehicles just by themselves are kind of a little boring, and the figures and the scene really brings them to life. It's funny when I think of that. The first thing that pops into my head was the DAC crewman that you sculpted that had the 6-pack abs and his shirt is open. Again, he looks kind of tired and worn down and ready to just go home. But when I think of your work in that regards, I'm drawn to that figure, even though, the Panzer III is so much bigger than the individual figures.
No, I agree. Because when I look at the photographs of all of the vehicles and things, of course, I'm looking at the details of the vehicles, but I'm fascinated with the crewmen and what they're doing, because these machines wouldn't go anywhere without the crew. So I guess I'm always very interested in that. When you look at the Africa Corps, all those guys, I'm sure they're miserable. The flies, the heat, the cold. I mean, just every extreme possible. But for some reason, I've always been fascinated with that stuff in the Western Desert. And I got hold of some of David Parker's AFV modeler stuff for an SAS Jeep. So I'm working on that.
Oh, nice.
16th.
It's a great subject, and David's really good at the 3D printed accessories, like you said.
He really is. Yeah.
The golden age of accessories. You see the work he does, you're just like, wow, it's incredible. Well, who's inspiring you right now? I mean, you mentioned the SAS Jeep. Are there some projects that you're kind of thinking about, or maybe starting to kind of come into focus for you that you want to talk about? I'm trying
to finish up for MFCA right now. I have a lot of historical stuff done. Things that were commissioned by collectors, but there's a piece that I'm just doing for myself that we'll see if somebody's interested in it. It's a 135th. It's an Israeli Sherman and a T-54 from the 67 war. And I always thought that Sherman was pretty cool. And I got myself into the T-54 because I thought, that would be kind of a neat little backdrop behind it. And I bought a mini art kit, which if anybody's ever built one, they understand. They're not they're not friendly. Let's put it that way. They turn out amazing. I mean, the detail, it looks great, but my God, was that a chore to put together. I would like to help them with sprue organization. Kind of cool.
That's right.
I mean, there must have been 1,000 parts, and you got A, B, C, CA, D, every letter of the alphabet, and it's an E and an H and an I, and it's like, and there's no rhyme or reason to it. It's like, all right, I'm going to work on the turret. I bet it's going to take up maybe these couple sprues. No, it's like 18 different sprues. You're digging one part off of it. I don't know.
Yeah, you opened it up.
It turned out wonderfully, and kudos to those guys that designed it. I mean, I consider myself an okay builder, but some of that stuff just didn't fit right either, But it's at the end result, it's a good looking piece. It really is, the T-54. But it had the full interior in it and all. And it's like, oh God, what did I get myself into?
Yeah, that kid will give you PTSD. I swear to God.
Yeah, I had to do it in small chunks.
You do.
Work on it for a little while and pick a page and go, all right, I'm going to do this page today.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those ones that you, like you said, you do a page at a time, and it's just, I built one too. I built one of the T-54s, and it's turns out beautiful, but wow. We always, for years and years, we all complained about, we want more detail. We want more detail.
I know. Careful what you wish for. And the thing is, now that it's done, you can hardly see any of the stuff I did. I painted and did the whole interior. You hardly see through these tiny hatches any of it. I could have simplified it, and I think I will next time I take that on. I will put the turret on and put the bombing on and look in the hatch and see what I can actually see.
It's like one of those memes where many are, heard somebody saying how many sprues were in dragon boxes and, hold my beer.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I look at Dragon very fondly after this.
Yes, except for the instructions, right?
It doesn't matter. I go by the visuals anyway.
That's right.
And, for a lot of these kits, I don't know if you guys are the same way, but I have all these reference sources because I don't really trust necessarily in anything that's going on,
Yeah, especially if you want to get into the variants and, the different, different specialty kind of fit outs of different vehicles and everything. And I know you get into that level of detail.
I do. And there's a Stug that I did do one in 1/16th, which turned out kind of cool. I'll bring that to MFCA. But also there's a 135th one I want to do in Hungary. That's a really interesting vehicle. But, when you engage all of the people out there that go on the various websites, it's amazing what you learn and what you find out. And you just have to be open to it. But you can't trust anything, because as soon as you do, somebody will produce another photo. And it actually happened for this Stug. It has an after photo that's closer after it was knocked out. And the Russians, did their thing where they mark a number on it and all that. But you can see it's the same vehicle because it had an interesting front fender on it, which was the front part of the fender on the starboard side was actually the rear fender off of a Panzer III that it looks like they just put it on there and welded it. So it's the same vehicle when you see it knocked out later. But it's interesting because there was a discussion. This is minutia that only modelers care about, but what type of Zimmer it was on it. And, it has the square mantlet on it, but it looks like it has some later features, but a lot of early features. So I think it turns out that the vehicle was an early model that got refurbished at the factory probably at some point and then got turned loose out there, and then some field modifications to keep it going. But it makes for an interesting vehicle. I like stuff like that.
Yeah, that period in Hungary in 44, 45 is a very interesting time for vehicles for me.
Yeah, yeah.
Both German and Russian. You see a lot of Lend-Lease American stuff being used. You see a lot of, like your Stug, there's a lot of one-off Panthers, a lot of one-off Panzer IVs that are very interesting. Yeah, you bring up a great point about reference material. I'm the same way. I love talking to people about stuff, but I'm also one of those guys that's, I want to see a little bit of proof. It is the minutia of this hobby that we all do that. I think
all of us are amateur historians and engineers at some level where you start. I collect some of these books, and I think my wife must think I'm crazy. I got 16 books on the Stug 3. How can they be different? But they are.
Yep.
But they are. Every one of them is completely different. Another hobby I have is I fool around with guitars, and I have 8 guitars or something, and they all sound different, and there's a reason for each one. But to the casual observer on the outside, he thinks you're effing crazy. You've got how many guitars? Why? Well, the Les Paul, the humbuckers sound different than the single coil. Oh, whatever, but we love all this. I think we love the research. I did a model last year for MFCA, which was the famous Sherman, one of the first uses of it by the 9th Lancers at El Alamein. And, I asked some questions about it because I wasn't sure what factory made this and what little details go on it. And I do have to say I enjoy going down those rabbit holes of figuring out, well, that was a Lima build, or that was a Baldwin build, or that was a, who knows? There's so many. Chrysler built them, and
Halco,
yeah. They started in October, the E8s, and 44, and they wouldn't have made it to combat until the Battle of Bo. But if you don't know all that, some people don't care, and that's fine too. That's part of what I like about this. I like getting into that extra detail.
You mentioned, I'm going to take you back to the monsters part for a minute, and
sure.
A little bit of a sci-fi and fantasy guy. But, when I was a young man, King Kong was very much one of the, the old original black and white stop motion.
1933.
To me, there's more magic in that movie than there is these $200 million Peter Jackson blockbuster kind of versions. Do you see, is that ever something that, for MFCA or MMSI, I know you kind of focus on historical things, but is that something you might incorporate into your model making?
That's an interesting idea. I haven't, since retiring out of the business, I've been just delving into the historical stuff. I think because for so many years, it was all fantasy things, and not fantasy like the modelers at Monte Sansevino, but fantasy, monsters and creatures and the movie fantasy.
Yeah.
I think I may have gotten my fill of it, but it doesn't mean that at some point, maybe something like that might be kind of fun. A shadow box of King Kong or something with, some of the glass paintings and all of the ideas that they used to do and shoot that stuff. And
I think I just heard Barry and Jim go, yes, somewhere in the background from this conversation. John's going to do a box. Yes.
I've always toyed with it. I always thought something like the Red Baron might be kind of fun too. Catch the plane flying, maybe looking at it from behind with him turning around, looking at us. I don't know. You get these ideas.
Yeah.
I got more ideas than I have time.
It's funny, I talk to a lot of friends that are retired, and they all say that. It's like, yeah, you think you won't be as busy, but that's not how that works.
Not for me. And I did a podcast, I think might have been earlier, and they were asking me about the 40th anniversary of the Terminator. And he was saying, well, now you're retired. How could you stop after all those years of working in the film? And I haven't. I just have turned my attention to this. But what it does feel like is I stepped off that fast train, because the movie business is very competitive. The time is not yours. You're dedicated to that film, and those hours on set. I used to drive sometimes 2 hours each way to work on the Mandalorian down in Manhattan Beach. And then you're putting in a 12-hour day when you're on set. So by the time you get home, you go to bed and then you get up and you do it all over again. And that does get tiring after a while. What keeps you going is the work and the result of the work. I mean, if you made somebody happy and brought some joy to somebody's life, then that's a cool thing. And ultimately, I think that's what the movies do. They bring joy. Yeah. It gives people a release from whatever their worries or whatever for a couple hours or an hour, or if it's a TV show, they get to disappear into that world and forget about everything.
One of the you brought up the Mandalorian. One of the questions I kind of wanted to ask you was, obviously you've been recognized for a lot of different things and you've had a lot of success. What was it like, when you were working on Grogu, getting to see your first shot where you've created something and all of a sudden it, for lack of a better term, it comes to life and you get to see that for the first time?
That's always very rewarding. And you treat every single film that you work on the same way. You bring your A+ game, because ultimately, even if it's a bad movie or a bad TV show, it doesn't matter. Your name is on that work. And so each thing you do, you treat it with equal, because I get asked the question a lot of times, well, what's your favorite movie? But they're all your children. You gave birth to all of them. Grogu was kind of special because I really had a lobby to make a full puppet version of that, because I think originally it was going to be all CG, and we were going to do a reference piece for it. But I really felt like we could do something with him. And when we got him done, I shot a little video and we backlit the ears so you could see that rabbit ear, kind of the reddishness, but light passing through it. And I showed, for Jon Favreau, how many operators it was taken, where the rods go. I did it where you would see all the warts and what you're getting, quote unquote. And then I did some more beauty shots where you're not seeing all of the technical things and you're just seeing the result. And I think at that point he thought, well, there might be a little potential here. And once we got to set with him, he did come to life. And there's so many people that are involved, from sculpting and mold making and running skins and painting and finishing and punching hair and painting and creating eyes, to all of us on set that were puppeteering and bringing it to life. You have production designers like Doug Chang, and then Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni. Everyone had their hands in this thing. That's the thing about filmmaking, which is different than modeling. It's very collaborative. It takes a village to put this thing together, because with the time frame and all, you couldn't do it. I know James Cameron could probably do it all by himself. Even he knows he needs a team. It's different, but with these models, I mean, unless it's one of these tag team things, where a guy sculpts and paints it. But for all the rest of us, it's a one-man show. But that's the big difference. The similarities, though, are very similar. You're creating a character, you're sculpting. In my case, anyway, you're sculpting it and you're bringing it to life. It's a very similar path to what I did in the movies. The only difference is it didn't take a village. But somehow I got veered off of your question. What was your question?
No, I mean, I think you've answered the question. Just really what was that like? Grogu was so human. That's right. Yeah.
The other thing about Grogu, and I think that this is all Favreau, was that it was to be kept a secret. until the show was to come out. So it was really hard when we were there working on the episodes. Everyone was sworn to secrecy. And when he wasn't being filmed, this team from Disney Marvel would come around and make sure it was covered and hidden and all this stuff. But I think it paid off because the marketing people in Disney were like, "Oh, we got Christmas coming. Why don't we get this thing out there?" And I think John's instincts were correct. And let's hold it back and let's surprise everybody. And I think that worked, because when you see that first episode of The Mandalorian, and then it's, as the world knew it at the moment, Baby Yoda, know, it kind of exploded at that point.
I agree. It was huge. I was really drawn to The Mandalorian because I love Westerns, and it's really a Western.
Yeah.
And, was really enjoying it. And then the element of Grogu comes in and it just kind of boom, Favreau, just like you said, I think you really nailed it. And it's amazing getting to talk to somebody that had a hand in that, because it is such
And John, you bring up the Western thing. I mean, all of the Star Wars series, it kind of has that Western vibe to it.
Yeah.
But the stunt performer / actor that plays the Mandalorian through most of the series, his name is Brendan Wayne. He's John Wayne's grandson. And John brought him in. He had worked with him on Cowboys and Aliens, but he really wanted that kind of gait, that cowboy, because Brendan's a real cowboy. And so I think it does lend some of that, even subconsciously, to the character. And I think it does come through. And we don't really know why we like something, but it speaks to us on a lot of different levels.
Yeah, it does. I also get that, the Seven Samurai feel about it too.
Oh, totally.
Yeah. And, it's also nice to see The Mandalorian has gone more to physical effects, more models, more, puppets and stuff like that. And I think that's really, you're starting to see that in where I'm at a little bit happening more. So that's great. I find that very interesting. But I do want to go back to something you said a little earlier. Sorry. And you're talking about, when you saw a person's work and you wanted to learn about it. Who are you looking at now? Who are your favorite modelers?
I think for painting, I always look at, I think Calvin Tan is an amazing painter. I really do. And there's a lot of guys out there. I don't even know who all their names are sometimes, but you see, paint job, and you look at it and you go, all right, I gotta get better. I gotta up my game. I mean, as far as sculptors, I collect a lot of pieces by different sculptors because, number one, I want to always compare my work. I want to look at how somebody engineered something and put it together. And I think Taesung Arms of Alpine I think he's a great sculptor.
Yeah.
And I like our collaborations. I like working with him. I think he's a really good sculptor. There's a lot of good painters, a lot of good sculptors out there. And I just try to look at everybody's work and try to see something in it that will help improve my work. Not to steal from it, but to be inspired. And I think we take from here and there and everywhere, and we kind of craft it into our own style. And I mean, there's songs like that when you hear a band or whatever. And it's well, that's the Rolling Stones, or you can just tell immediately. And I think there's people's work like that too, where you can just look at it and go, that's that guy's work. But I think that's a good thing. I mean, I always strive for realism, but I'm sure some of my own personal style comes through. I don't. I always try to look at what it would have been and try to go there. I'm not one of these that stylizes everything or, soups up the green or whatever, just to. And there's nothing wrong with that. If that's what makes you happy and that's your style, that's great. But for me personally, I have my own set of rules that I want to live by or criteria I want to meet. And that's just the way I go with it.
So question, building a vehicle or sculpting or painting, is one of those a clear favorite, or does it just depend on the moment?
Is sculpting and painting, because sculpting is, you're creating the story, the idea, the figure, which is my favorite part probably. And then painting is you're bringing it to life. Is building figure, building the model, sometimes, I enjoy that. It's fun, but that's not my first go-to. There's a lot of guys that it's all about just building that model. For me, I want to build it, and I want to look at photos, and I want to incorporate something from this photo or that photo into it to make it interesting. Or sometimes I want to just copy one from a photo because I like everything about that photo. But building the model itself is probably third on my list. And painting and sculpting, probably kind of equal.
Yeah, that makes sense. Kind of neck and neck. But I'm sure, do you go through phases like where you really sculpt a lot? I build my models, I do that. I want to build sometimes, I want to paint other times.
No, I've learned to be more disciplined and finish everything. But I will save up several pieces to paint. I won't just and I'll sculpt a bunch of stuff and I'll send them off to get castings, or I'll do them one-offs for myself or a collector. But I'll get a whole bunch of things done, and then I'll sit down and paint. Like I'm finishing off the painting mode. I'm in painting those that Israeli diorama that I'm doing now. But I've got a bunch of other stuff that's kind of built and or being built in the background. Sometimes what I'll do is I've got two separate desks set up. I got one for sculpting and painting, and then I have another one for just building kits, a little area. And after I've put in a few hours of either sculpting or painting, sometimes I'll just go over there and, work on building a kit. Something I've really fallen in love with is some of these 3D printed tracks now too. For me, building kit tracks, there's no joy in that.
You don't like mini art tracks? Come on now.
Well, it's all of them. It's all of them now. They've really gone kind of overboard. And a lot of these 1/16 scale kits, it takes, there's all the horn goes here and this and that, and this is two pieces, and then it's just like, this is not therapy for me. I get it. If you're some engineer or an accountant all day, this might be fun for you. Not for me. I couldn't care less about 1,000-piece tracks. I had to, unfortunately, I didn't have a better alternative. But for the Easy 8 tracks that go on this Israeli Sherman, I had Rocum, or I don't know who, Rachen or RACHEN or something, Roppen, or I don't know. I've had them in my stash for years, and I thought, these are really detailed. And then I sat down and I built them, and it's like, oh, God, why?
yeah, it's like when people ask me about model cast and tracks, I say, yeah, I built one set.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, one set. That's all.
Me too. One set of Sherman tracks and never again.
Yeah.
But I've made this mistake. I did not use the mini art tracks. They were just ridiculous. Too many parts. And the thing is, with those plastic tracks, although I did do a set of T41 plastic tracks for that early Sherman from mini art, but my God, just to clean up and getting the seams off of all these things, it's not fun. It's really not. Not for me, anyway.
You need some subcontractors there, John.
Yeah, can you build this for me, please?
That's right. I really like the metal tracks. I know a lot of people don't like to to drill out the links. But the great thing about those is you get them together and then they're really, really tough. So you could put them on the model, take them off, fling them around. You know, they're really, really great. How has retirement, you mentioned that you're still pretty busy, but how has it changed maybe your focus on your model making where you don't have to put in those 16-hour days, working on the Mandalorian?
No, it's really helped with my model building. It's gone tenfold since I retired, because I used to have to carve out, all right, here's a Saturday, I could work on it. And then the rest of the time, you really can't. And I didn't get that much done for quite a while there. But now I feel like I'm being very prolific, and although I keep adding to the stash, I'll build a few and then I'll buy a few more. And it never seems to really go down.
Yours does that too, huh?
Yeah. I think it's our sickness all of us have.
Yeah, I agree with that. For me, it's books too. I can't stop.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, my wife every time that Amazon box shows up, and I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. It's those things. Yeah. You bring up some really good points, and for a novice, very, very novice sculptor myself, what do you recommend for a good reading material for beginning sculpting and stuff like that?
Just find an anatomy book that you really like. Mm-hmm. And for what I do through the years, I've collected a lot of the equipment and uniforms, and I still will buy a reproduction Civil War uniform or World War II or whatever, because the original stuff is just gone out of sight. Yeah. When I first got into this, I was buying mostly all original stuff. So I have a mix, but they're doing a really good job with the reproductions. But what I'll do is I'll put these outfits on, or if I'm lucky enough to be around my son, who's 5'11" and 150 pounds, he's perfect. I used his abs for the African organ. I mean, there are people with abs like that. He doesn't do anything to get that. That's the way he is. But, somebody made that comment, oh, that guy's really working out. I go, no, he's not. And you can look at pictures of those guys in the period pictures. They're just skinny. 5'9" and weigh 130 pounds. Just the way they're not eating real well at the front.
No. Yeah. You got to think about these are, depression kids, coming out of the depression. So they're fighting for everything. So they weren't big, they were, like you say, 115, 120, 150 pounds at the most. A lot of them were just, if you look at comparing Sherman interiors and, looking at real tanks, and then you cross-reference to like an M1 or a Bradley, and you're like, well, that's a lot more room. We're a bit bigger. And I that interests me a lot. And you actually talked about artists there. I'm a big Dale Gallen fan and for Civil War. And his pictures tell a definite story. And, that's just another thing that I like too. The anatomy book's great. I appreciate that.
Yeah, take a look. There's lots of them out there on the market. You just have to find one or two that really suit you. But for me, it really helps to photograph in the pose wearing the uniform, because the clothing, it all folds differently, it hangs differently. And once you put some gear on it and you're actually holding a 12-pound Garand, and, you can see the people's, and there's some amazing digital sculptors, but you look at the work and go, that guy doesn't know his stuff. That's all wrong. He doesn't have the details down. Or he's holding a Garand or Thompson in a way that he just can't do it, because these things weigh something. And you can't find enough period photos of them actually just hanging around with this stuff.
Right.
Because there's just a way you naturally gravitate to holding this. It's like I have a Thompson and an MP40 that were built from real parts, so you don't fire anymore. But that's that's fine. I don't need them to actually fire, but I want them to have the weight and I want them to be right. So the way your fingers grip them and where you hold them and where it's natural, to all that comes into play. And, if you're lucky enough to find a photo of the guy you want to sculpt, that's great inspiration, but you need it. It's a sculpture. So it's got to be from 360 degrees, 3D. It's got to look great from every angle, not just the one angle. And by photographing, all the Howard Piles and all these people who used to do this years ago, he had a whole wardrobe where he dressed guys up like pirates and he'd paint them. I was in one of the museums in London years ago, and I saw a model that Raphael, the painter, had made. And what he had done is he sculpted, looked like, I don't know, 1/17th scale or 1/6, or maybe it was a little bigger. But he had sculpted them in the poses that he was painting. So at night, he could move candles and stuff around and he could keep working when his models had gone home.
Wow.
But I had no idea. But
yeah,
it makes sense. It makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I mean, because nowadays it'd be a picture that you would keep with you.
Well, now it's a photograph.
Yeah,
it's so much easier.
Yeah, but that's interesting. That's very interesting.
Yeah, I really stopped at that and looked and read that and stared at that for a long time because it's like, well, that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
How else, because he wanted to keep working, and models. So I'm sure they got sick and tired of, after a while, a piece of bread and some salami. Cut it. So I'm ready to go home. But, and these artists didn't have any money, I'm sure.
Yeah. I think a lot of times if they had a patron that would put a roof over their heads, they were doing really well, You're
right.
Well,
and some of them did well, but
yeah.
But for the most part, I think a lot of them starved.
Well, with whether it's what you used to do for your day job or your modeling, I mean, I'd like to focus on modeling, but I'll let you decide. If you saw young John Rosengrant, what advice would you give him for somebody that wants to be creative and wants to express themselves? What would you say to him?
Well, if you see that spark in somebody, and I did have that opportunity, hired a lot of people through my years, you do want them to have that drive. You can't manufacture that. That drive is something that you have to have. And if you see somebody that's got that and that they have some raw talent, it can be developed. But it's that inner fortitude, that drive to stick with it through thick and thin and not quit, that I think is what separates you. It's that I feel like I still have that burning inside me to do better and to learn and to be a better artist and sculptor. And I don't want to lose that, because I think, as I stated earlier, I think when you do, you go stale. And I want to, keep getting better. But for that young person, I would say, in this world, learn the digital sculpting and all the digital art programs. But there's something to be said with still being able to do it and create it with your hands. Because for all my years with Legacy and at Stan Winston, the best digital sculptors were the ones that came from the practical world, that had done it the old-fashioned way first. Because now they're using it as a shortcut, not as the only way they know it. And there's a difference, because they built it up the old-fashioned way, and now they can model it much quicker with 3D. I go back and forth. Do I want to take a sabbatical and learn? For all the years that I supervised 3D sculptors and did all that, there was something still brought me joy to do it freehand with my hands. But it's a catch-22. I mean, something that I learned from Stan too is to not be afraid of the tools. Embrace whatever they are. Don't put CG down because it's your competitor. Find a way to work with it and make it your friend. Make it help you. it's I think that's the positive spin on just about anything, really, is look at it as a growth opportunity and something to learn from. The man who does nothing makes no mistakes.
Well, that's true. I think I see a little bit of a parallel too in modeling. We over the last few decades, and especially recently, whether it's, let's say, photo etch parts or 3D printed parts, you always have sort of this group that will say, oh, that's cheating or whatever. But, it really adds, I think, to the toolbox. Like you said, it's just another tool.
It's another tool. Yeah, I don't think it's cheating. I guess from my viewpoint, having done it all with scrap styrene and from scratch, if somebody offers a printed part version of it, I'll take it. It's not therapy for me to build some of these parts from scratch. It's really not. And I guess in a way, it gives me more time to concentrate on sculpting a figure and painting and finishing. If somebody else has created, I've mentioned David Parker before and his AFV modeler, all those parts that he offers for all that stuff. Sure, if you have the time and you want to sit down and model all that from scratch with scrap plastic or whatever, more power to you. That's great. But me personally, I would rather just buy it, be done, move on. Because there's going to be enough stuff on the kit that you're going to end up having to scratch build or embellish and fix. Might as well not do it all, is how I look at it.
I'm 100% with you. Let's not reinvent the wheel. We don't have to invent the wheel. And we can spend more time working, like you said, on that figure or the story. I really find, this conversation very interesting in many levels. But we talked a little bit about your favorites and what you like to do and stuff like that. And I'm going to ask you another favorite question, and I'm sorry about this. I know you don't like these guys. When it comes to painting a figure, do you prefer the scales or the smaller 1/35 scales?
I like mixing it up because I think it makes you a better painter. Okay. And it makes you a better sculptor to go from 1/35 to 1/16. Jump back to 75. I think it keeps your brain thinking in scale. And I'm a real stickler for scale. Something happened back in the days, I don't know, taking it back a ways now, in the 2000s when I was working for Jim Sullivan at S&T Models. He was building a Tiger One, that Tamiya Tiger One, and he was embellishing it with all the Aber stuff and fixing it all up, and I was going to do a crew for it and paint it. And I was under that misnomer of scale. 1/16 was 120 millimeter. And I don't know how that got propagated. It might have been from Verlinden Superscale 120 millimeter. And somebody said it's 1/16, and that sort of stuck. And you can see some manufacturers today that call it 1/16 120. And 1/16 is not 120. 120 is actually 1/15. And the reason I found this out the hard way, I started sculpting the Commander figure for the Tiger One in 120 millimeters tall. When actually in 1/16, he'd probably be about 114 millimeters tall. And that's a big difference. And when you go to put that guy in the hatch or put him on the tank and he looks like a giant, it really bothered me. So at that point in time, I stopped. And everything that I started doing for S&T at that point moving forward was true 1/16 scale. And I think Taesung Harms does a real nice job with that at Alpine, keeping those figures at 1/16. And the stuff that I'm doing for my old partner, Chris Morosco at Raptor Figures now is 1/16. I think it's important when you're interacting with a scale model that you use the same sense of measurement. There's this sculpting figure thing. It's like, it's 75 millimeters to the eyes. It's like, no, it's not. No. You measure from the heels to the top of the head. Just like when you measure a rifle or a gun barrel, that's how you measure. And you divide by 35, or you divide by 16, or you divide by 24. That gives you your scale, not this art. Now, if you're doing a single figure, like the stuff that Bill Horan does, it really doesn't matter. It's roughly 54. It's not interacting with a 1/32 scale tank. But if it were, then you'd need to make sure that it was scaled properly. But if it's a standalone, who cares if it's 120 or 80? I mean, 1/32. I don't see 54 millimeter figures. They've somehow grown to 65 millimeter figures now. And I see a lot of the 75 millimeter stuff that it's closer to 85 or a 90. And it's like, okay. But I guess it doesn't matter if it's sitting alone or there's two of them next to each other and they're both that scale. But for me, it's just easier to keep it at a true scale.
I'm going to throw a hard one at you here. What do you think your legacy for the hobby is going to be? What do you think people will say about your body of work?
Oh, well, that's hard. I would hope they would say he moved the Shep Payne tradition forward and he was known for creating characters. I mean, if I were going to write my own, that's what I would say.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I think that you bring a human element, you bring a storytelling element, which is what I really admire about your work. And the other thing is just your perspective and the way that you're willing to share with other people. I think, we talked about in this conversation sort of the evolution of the hobby. And I think the hobby's becoming more social. It's becoming more collaborative, and you've had a big part in that. And it's been great to kind of get to know you and get to know who you are and see that part of you. So, yeah, that's what I would say, if that's worth anything.
Yeah, if I could be a friend from afar to fellow modelers, that would be great. Yeah, or an inspiration in some way, the way Shep was for me, the way Ron Volstadt was for me. I mean, his paintings, always loved getting those squadron books and seeing his paintings in there. And then Osprey, and then all the dragon artwork. And yeah, he took it very seriously. He's got quite the collection of uniforms and knowledge. Yeah, he's a good one.
Well, I mean, I'm going to just echo what Scott said. As a former military guy myself, you do show the tiredness that is there. You do show the life that is, even when someone, the 1,000-yard stare is what everybody calls it, but there's life behind that 1,000-yard stare, and you you catch that. That's something that, myself, especially as I go forward in my trying to learn to figure paint better, that's your definite inspiration to me. I look at your stuff a lot of times and just, and I stare at it and just, like you said, just learn. This has been great. I mean, I don't know what, how Scott would say, but I've had a fantastic time, and I really do appreciate this.
It's been fun.
Yeah.
It gives us a chance to talk about this hobby.
Yeah.
But for the most part, we experience alone.
Yeah.
Until we go to a show.
Yep.
And it's nice and that's what I enjoy going to the shows, is you're finding all these like-minded people that put politics, put all that other stuff aside. And there's this one thing that draws us all together, and it's making miniatures come to life. And we all like that.
Yeah, that is so true. You bring up some really good points, is that the community is small, but we're very friendly. Everybody seems to be extremely friendly, and it's really nice. I love talking to, I'm not going to say older, but more aged, I guess.
I am.
So am I. So, and I can remember having the Shep Payne diorama books, how to build model up, how to build the armor books, the green, how to build diorama books I still have a copy of that. That
Me
is
too.
so beat. It is so beat up, but it's my favorite book. When I have that time where I'm having trouble building and stuff like that, or painting, I always pull that out and read it again. And it's just one of those inspirational things.
He's got all the basics are there.
Yep. Yeah.
All the basics are there. And AK and all these other companies might make every other gadget and thing under the sun. But for me, I like all that because it saves me from mixing all that stuff that I used to do. I used to take and thin all that oil paint, all these different colors.
Yeah.
When I filters, it's like, oh, is that what they're called? It's just like, it's fine. It's cool. But you just used to do that. And it was like, oh, I'd thin my Humbrals down to, or oil paints and shift the color on this and that. And they're not new concepts. They're just, it's been marketed and they've made a business out of it, which is good. And I know it saves me a lot of time. It's like I have 4,000 paints by all these different companies. And for me, I'd rather go search and find the color instead of mixing it, because sometimes you're forced to mix it because it's never quite right, or the shades in between you've got to mix. And that's what wet palettes are for. But if I can return to the base colors without having to just mix it from scratch, I like that. It's easier. It's good.
Yeah, I think you said it best. We're very fortunate. We're in a great age of this hobby, this passion that we all share. We have access to so much information and so many photographs and, all this historical stuff. But and then the tools of the trade. We have, incredible quality paints and finishing materials and everything.
Yeah.
Kind of one more question here. I guess, is there we sometimes ask modelers about kind of what their magnum opus is, but is there a project that you've kind of always had in the back of your mind, or something that you'd really, really like to tackle someday?
The next one.
The next one. Yeah.
The next one. I've got a couple. I'm going to get to the U-boat. When that kit came out, I was kind of excited about it. And then I found a guy's RC Subs, and he made all this great photo etch stuff to correct the kit, because I'm lazy now like that. And I don't need to build a new deck for my 1/35th scale U-boat. I'm glad he made a photo etch piece that corrects it all, But I think that's kind of fun, and that's water. And I think I've been toying with that one for a long time. And I got a 1/35th scale PT boat idea that I've collected some parts over the years for, and I'll do that one. But it's the next one. Whatever that is your, this SAS Jeep will be fun.
Yeah.
This 67 war in 1/35th scale is a lot of fun right now.
Yeah, those
now
figures.
That the mini art gets done.
Yeah. those figures that you've sculpted for that look really, really terrific. So anyway, well, John, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. I've enjoyed it immensely, and looking forward to seeing you in October at MMSI again, and best of luck at MFCA, and just appreciate what you're doing and your contributions.
Well, thank you guys for the opportunity, and I hope everyone that's listening to this got some enjoyment out of it, and that's all one can hope. So,
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity, guys. All right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Really kind of a few interviews we've done where I get to geek out a little bit, and, getting to ask John about the Mandalorian and what it was like, putting together Grogu and putting in all that work to create him from a sketch and bring him, to life as a puppet. And then great conversation. Really enjoyed it. Let's go to our second discussion point. I'm going to turn the time back over to Mr. Jim Bates, aka Doug 3.
Well, first of all, the only reason I'm here is I was told Grogu would be a guest. I was lied to. I wanted to interview Grogu. Mostly why he likes to eat those sloppy egg things. But anyway, all right. Our second discussion topic was kind of inspired with a video, I think, that dropped yesterday from Chris Wallace, the model airplane maker, where he's building a Corsair and the paint goes terribly wrong. So what my question is how do we recover from mistakes? Do we give up? Does it go on the shelf of doom? I'm in my spare time, I'm a demotivational speaker. So I totally believe if at first you don't succeed, quit, or, just give it up, throw it away, move on to something else. Hey, why would we have any stick-to-itiveness? Why would we fix these things? Don't listen to a thing I say, please. But what does everybody do? I tend to be in a weird position in that I am easily ready to quit. But often what happens is I put it aside, it goes in the shelf of doom and gets covered in dust, or it goes in the drawer of no hope. And then I pull it out like a year or two later and I'm like, what is wrong with this? It's okay. So I have learned that my process sometimes is hate the model, put it away, bring it back out, and then turn around and finish it. So I'm intrigued to hear what everybody else's process is. And let's start with Doug Reed. What do you do when you make mistakes, Doug?
Let's see. When I make mistakes, I think I will stop and just try to immediately fix what's in front of me and move on. I'm not... I'll be careful saying this. I'm not a huge perfectionist when it comes to my models, in the sense that as long as when I'm done, it looks like what it's supposed to look like, I'm okay. So if it means, I don't know, fudging over something or whatever, I'll just do it. I won't, if I make a painting mistake, I won't strip the paint. I just won't do that. I'll paint over it. I'll do some spot sanding, whatever it is. If it's a seam or whatever, I'll file the stupid thing until it's flat. I don't know. You know what I mean? And so I'll just fix it and move on and go on from there. So I don't think I get too hung up on it. And to me, no kit is unbuildable. I talk all the time to my friends about that. And so, that's kind of where I'm at on it.
I would agree. I always laugh when I hear that model's unbuildable. I'm like, well, it might be unbuildable for me, but there's absolutely somebody out there who can do it. Like it's amazing what I hear that kind of attitude. And again, after hearing positivity from Doug, I will demotivate you with another. Do you remember all those posters you used to see on the wall in like the 90s, the motivational posters? If at first you don't succeed, quit. All right, let's go over to Grant. How do you recover from mistakes? What is your process, Grant?
Well, it's a very long process. First of all, I crawl up in a ball underneath my table. I cry for about 45 minutes, but like a man. Then I get on the internet and then I cry on the internet. No, I used to just stop and put it down and walk away and start something new or work on something new. Lately, last couple 5-10 years, I guess, I've been pushing myself to push through it. If there's like Doug Reed said, just fix it on the spot. Don't stop or get away from it. And I'm going to add this is I think that since I've been doing that, especially painting figures, I think that you get a lot of times, not all the time, but a lot of the times, I think you get happy results if you just keep pushing on it. You find a different way to paint something. You find a different method to paint something by, more than basically accepting that problem, accepting the mistake. And if you accept the mistake and you look at it and say, okay, how can I fix this? Or what can I do to make this better? I think that is a very good learning process for yourself. But, I cannot say that there's been things that have hit the wall behind my desk doing Mach 3 that I've messed up before. So, I'm trying to mature in my process. So, I would say that, just push through it and you usually find that you come out fine and you do learn.
Well, I think we're all trying to mature both in our process and in life. At least I know I am, or maybe I'm not sure. They say they're not mistakes, they're happy trees. But really, you want happy trees in your model? And now let's turn it over to Rick, because I think he builds depressed trees. So, Rick, how do you recover when you make mistakes?
Well, you're assuming I make mistakes, so we'll start there. No, mistakes are just part of the process, and I guess I learned a long time ago to just accept them and embrace them. Something will come out of them. I think Doug was talking about learning scratch building earlier on. I think it's part of. There's two parts of the mistakes that I'll make. One is in the construction, and one is in the painting and weathering. And if it's in construction, or if it's a hard kit to build or a difficult kit to build, having that basis of knowing that, yeah, I broke this part, or I got too much glue here, or whatever, I can put it back together by scratch building. It gives you a confidence level that, it's repairable. We can make this happen. And then kind of what's already been said here in terms of finishing, painting and weathering and such. I just work through it. There's nothing that I haven't been able to recover from. The worst case, I've never stripped a model. The worst case that will happen is kind of what's been alluded to before, is you might do a little bit of sanding here or there. But generally, those flaws, least initially, end up being something that can actually be an eye catcher later on, something you can build upon. So I just don't panic when things go kind of sideways and let them kind of play out.
I think that's a good point, Rick, is that you say you don't panic. And that's the key, I think, I used to panic and I was like, and then I would go down the road of doom for a few minutes. But, and since I think that if you don't panic, you can form ideas in your head or concepts to look at the model and how you can fix it or make it better, lack of a better words. So, that's a good point, is not to panic, just accept it and move on.
Yeah, I was just going to comment on the scratch building part, that I'm learning slowly that you can recover from a lot of stuff just by fixing it with whatever it is, scratch build or redoing a part. Anyway, that's well said.
I think it's really interesting, Rick. You've never stripped a model. I have self-glossed myself as the best stripper on the internet because I don't think there's a model I haven't stripped paint off once. So I don't think I've ever put paint down and had it work. But I think I have just caused Scott to go into G-Lock here by saying that. So instead of turning it over to him, let's go over to the first number one Doug in all our hearts. How do you recover from mistakes?
Well, I've got a shelf full of mistakes that haven't been touched in years, but it all depends on what the mistake is. There are parts that I just don't want to recover from if I foul them up. But I have not stripped paint, although I have a model that's waiting for me to do just that. I've not quite gotten around to it. I had a problem with my Tamiya, the new Tamiya 48 scale Spitfire. I tried first time airbrushing the markings. And it didn't go so well. They didn't line up. They were just, you've got circles that don't sit square, right in the center of the circle. It doesn't look right. So I need to strip the paint and go over it again. I'm just kind of hesitant. But usually if I mess up something on a paint job, I also don't usually strip paint if I can avoid it. I mean, airbrush paint goes on so thin, it's not too hard to just go right back over the top of something. You don't add too much to it. And that's usually my recovery for paint. I've cracked a few parts and been able to put them back together again. The one thing that scares me is canopies or any clear pieces. If you muck those up, you're in trouble trying to clean it up, because sometimes you can damage that plastic almost beyond repair. So that's a struggle for me. Otherwise, you just kind of roll with it. Sometimes a mistake can actually end up being a positive. I painted my first ATST from Bandai, and I completely spaced the fact that I'd switched over to these acrylics, and I was putting on something, and I went to clean something off with rubbing alcohol, and I removed the paint. And for some reason, the way the paint came off and what had been done already to the plastic underneath, it actually looked really good. So I left it. Hey, battle damage. That works in that situation. It can't work in everything, but it can be fun. It can be fun to just mess with what your mistake is and see if you can incorporate that into your build, if you're okay with incorporating that into your build, or if you want to take the time to fix it, because obviously sometimes it has to be fixed.
Yeah, the canopy one is an interesting one. I was modeling a couple Fridays ago, maybe a month ago, and I was working on an airplane. It was a Platts T-33. And my mistake was apparently I knocked the canopy onto the floor, and Muffin the Pug decided that was a treat. So I ended up hearing this crunching sound, and I'm like, I haven't given her any carrots. What's going on? And I realized it was my canopy. And it's hard to recover from the tooth marks in the canopy and the crack. It's really hard to recover. So I hate to say it, the T-33 did not survive that night. On this topic, I was watching this really unknown YouTube modeler named Night Shift last night, and he built a whole base and just wasn't happy because it was oval, and went back and just started from scratch and built another one because it wasn't calling to him. So I think it happens to all of us. It's not just outside of Rick, who never makes mistakes. I think we all make mistakes, learn from them, and sometimes it is a joke I already made. The happy accidents become something that's better. So now that he's recovered and is able to answer, Mr. Scott, what's your take on all of this?
Well, first of all, I think we all have a shelf of doom, but I've never heard of a place that sounds so like so full of despair as the drawer of no hope. I'm going to have to go downstairs and go through my stuff and maybe make one. But I mean, I think you guys, I'm going to echo what's been said over the years. Doug can attest, when I was younger, a few Hasegawa models ended up being hurtled into walls at high speed and ended up in garbage cans. And that really doesn't happen anymore. I'd like to think it's because I've matured and become a better modeler. I think maybe the truth of the matter is I think the kits we build now are a lot better than they used to be. So that's probably where that is. But I want to kind of say the 48 and 48 and events like that, or even just challenging yourself to build a model in a set amount of time and just finish it, that there's a lot of value in that. Because when you finish something on a limited time, you kind of force yourself to adapt and respond. And so you may start out a project and say, okay, this is what I want to do. And if you've only got 48 hours to do it, sometimes you got to make a left turn when you didn't intend to. And I think there becomes value in just finishing something. Don't worry about it being perfect. Just finish it and see what you learn and see what you adapt to. And I think that's something that I've really, for myself, have used to good effect. You know, I like things like tune tanks that are sort of a little off the beaten path that maybe you don't care about as much as that, you know, Doug, that Spitfire Mark I or something, but, you know, it gives you a chance to just build something and finish it and not worry about it having to be, you know, that perfect image in your mind. And so, yeah, I mean, adapt, like the other guys have said, adapt, deal with it. If you need to strip the paint, or, you know, Jim, even on that T33, you know, don't bin them, just go get another one and use the parts out of that one. You know, I mean, let's be honest, the kits that we build for the most part, you know, unless you're building a perfect grade Millennium Falcon or something, you know, if we mess it up, we can go down and see Emil and get another one. It's not really a big deal. Might have to give up a hot dog the next day or something, but, you know, just go get another one, take another shot.
You know, it's interesting you say that, Scott, because that would bother me. I would then have a kit missing parts. So if it's something that you really screw it up and I've got I could take 8 parts, that probably is the case. But having a kit that I bought to replace a canopy would actually cause my OCD to get worse, because now I have a kit in the stash missing a canopy. And I know that means I need a lot of therapy, but that's okay. So I just want to thank Mr. Wallace. Check out his YouTube channel, Model Airplane Maker, for bringing up this topic. And before I throw it over to Doug for some cross promotion in the podcast sphere, I'm going to talk about the Posse. Also recommends several excellent modeling blogs and vlogs. And we're going to talk about Stephen Lee's Sprue Pry with Frets, great blog. We've already mentioned Mr. Wallace and his Model Airplane Maker. They want me to talk about a Scale Canadian TV with some gym guy, but that guy doesn't do anything anymore, so forget him. And then we've got David Brian Bridges, who does a blog, DB Scale Model Studio blog. And last but not least, we got to add somebody else to that list. We have this guy named Rick Lawler, and he's putting out a whole bunch of propaganda. And why is that not on that list? He just did this really awesome Malta Spitfire. And it makes me sad because that's something I've wanted to do since I first saw that photo. And he's gone and done it. And I've talked about it for 20 years. So at that, I'm going to throw it over to Doug Reed to talk about some other wonderful podcasts.
Okay, thanks. Hey, the Plastic Posse is just one of several great modeling podcasts. So if you're interested in more scale modeling content, you can head on over to modelpodcast.com, where you'll find links to many other great podcasts about our hobby. So head over there and explore more things.
Hey, Doug.
Hey, Scott.
What time is it?
It's time for merch. If you would like to rep the Posse, check out our awesome merch on the Triple P Spring page. You can find coffee mugs, t-shirts, jumpers, or even some of our world-famous Triple P lounge trousers. You can find all of your stylish Plastic Posse merch on the web at loungetrousers.com.
Rick, Jim, Doug, thank you so much for joining us. And this has been a lot of fun. It's been a great discussion. It's helped my FOMO quite a bit from missing out on amps, and really appreciate you guys joining us. Doug, especially, thanks for joining us and letting us pick your brain a little bit, put the heat lamps on you. And to all the listeners out there, thanks a lot for riding along with us for episode 91. It's kind of hard to believe that this is 91. That's crazy. We appreciate all of your support, as well as the support of our awesome Patreons. And of course, our sponsors, Tankcraft, Tamiya USA, and AK Interactive, for supporting what we do, supporting getting together and talking about this hobby that we have so much passion for. Also, remember that the Plastic Posse is available on YouTube. Back to you, Grant.
Thanks, Scott. We will return in 2 weeks, and we will be back to normal. That means the riffraff here that's going to be cut out. So, do you have feedbacks, suggestions, ideas, or just want to drop us a line? Send your feedback to us via email at plasticpossepodcast@gmail.com. And one more thing. Yeehaw!
Nice. Don't send your models to the drawer of no hope.
Or the shelf of no dreams.
There is not only a drawer of no hope for the started models, there is a closet of no hope for the unstarted models. And the problem with that is once you go in the closet of no hope, there's no hope you're ever coming out.
Yeah, this is taking a turn to the dark side. One of the ways that you can help to support the Plastic Posse is to become a Plastic Posse Outrider. And if you want to become an Outrider, well, it's super easy. Just go to our Patreon page at www.patreon.com/Plastic Posse Podcast. And you can set up a recurring donation there. These contributions are used to help offset the cost of bringing you the Triple P. We also buy merch and coins and just other things we do. All of that money that you're sending the posse goes back to the community. There's 3 different tiers of support, starting at just $1 a month. And there are some great benefits to being an Outrider. You get early access to podcasts. You get premium access to the host, the chance to appear on a podcast, whether you want to or not, right, Doug? And exclusive Triple P content and social events at model shows. They just had a big old get together that Matt Schaefer organized at AMPS Nationals. Also, remember, we recently dropped our inaugural PDF magazine called The Prospector. Second issue's a little bit late. John's job thinks that they have some kind of prior claim on him on his time. I don't know what that's about, but anyway, this next issue is going to be huge. That's a benefit for Patreons. It's a PDF, and it should be almost monthly. We may need to go to quarterly on it. It'll feature builds, articles, and other Triple P related content. Second issue is almost done, but it's going to be at least double the size of the first one. It's really great. We got build articles from the host. We've got show reports, lots of great photos, reference materials. It's really looking good. Thanks for your patience, and we'll get that out for the Patreon soon.
Let's recognize our amazing deputy marshals. These guys step up and help the posse do what we do, and we sincerely thank them for their support. Our latest deputy marshal is Mr. Sean Earl, a good friend and president of the Rocky Mountain Expo team here in Utah. Thanks, Sean. We also have Black Hat Scale Models, Ben Hardaway, Craig Jarbo, Adam Jackson, Red Beach One Studios, James Mirando, Casey Gray, Mike Norris, Stephen Rodwell, Rick Cooper, Tim Gidcombe, Dan Newman, Robert Blocker, Tyler Moore, Derek Post, Craig Flynn, Brian Kreiner, Scale Modelcraft, Ken Childress, Nick Butta, Drew Gardner, Scott Hall, Frank Perrone, The Voice of Bob, Jeremy Diamond, Ryan Smith, Terry Wilkinson, Chris Lovewell, Andrew Callis, Ethan Eidenmill, Bruce the Model Noob, Steve Baker, Eric Daglish, Joe Porche, Patrick Brown, Steve Schaefer, Jay Kidd, Brandon Gentry, Robert Klein, Mark Ewing, Ted Kawahara, Toadman, Model Doc, Doug Reed, Greg James, Les Workala, John Everett, Josh Buck, Thomas Bannock, Mark Bradley, Zach Pease, Joel Munson, Eric Brubaker, Jeremy Moore, DB Scale Model Studio, Matt Johnston, Jeremy Elliott, Mike Talley, Previous Seat, Mediocre Middle-Aged Modeler, Dan Knopfel, and J.C. Osborne.
And how about those posse foremen getting their hard hats and clipboards, and they help the Outriders and the deputy marshals and all that good stuff a hand. We thank them for the support. They include Mikkel, LeVar, Gil, Mike, Michael, Steve, Winston, Scott, Emery, the Krieger, Keith, William, Tim, Jeff, Eddie, Ross, George, Gary, Warhoff Models, Ross, Eric, Len, Cliff, Eric, Papa Steve, MD Models, JV, hope you're feeling better in Utah, JV, Damian, Kieran, Cody, Tim, Nuke Man Mike, Greg, Ash, Irish Pat, Paul, and What's the Deal with iBones Models, Mr. Grizz, Mac, MAK Armor, Chris, Lee, and Jamie.
And of course, our Posse Outriders. Lastly, a request for all our listeners. Would you please consider posting a review of the Triple P on your podcast platform? Each 5-star review helps other modelers find the Plastic Posse.